Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Amasid and today we are vendoring 127 gold rings with gilded fossils on them. Now I'd like to thank Follow the Right Path for providing these items. Let's hope we can actually hit something with them, because in the past I'm pretty sure I've struck out every single time with these. And I would say you have to get extremely lucky to get anything with them, but you never know. This could be the day. So essentially how this works is I will show an example with one before we do the batch. So you have one, it has that implicit item sells for much more to vendors. You vendor it. This is just the base cost of the ring, and then this hidden item is what you're receiving. So there, we got 3 chaos orbs. Nice. Put that back in, and that's pretty good. So the number to beat here is 7.4x. We have to get 7.4x back to make this profitable. Now, I'd say, you know, unlikely, but it's not impossible. Now, I know there's the method with maps and Orb of Horizoning them, and they obviously you used to be able to see what you were getting in the reward window before they hid it behind the boxes, and you just, you know, horizon them until you got X-alts. Anyway, I feel like this is a little bit more in the spirit of the fossil, you know, less maneuvering, less manipulating. We're just doing it pure and simple gilded fossils. So let's turn these fossils into currency now. Okay. It's currency. How did I do? Did I edit it well? I hope I did. But that was fun. But actually, this one better than expected. I mean, we hit 7 pure X-alts. That seems extraordinarily high to me. Now, the number to beat was 7.4x, right? So we beat it. I mean, we beat it. I'll walk through the results in terms of an excellence next tab in a second here, but I mean, just from looking at it, you can tell. I mean, we hit 7x plus this is more than 0.4x right here, and the chaos alone is more than 0.4x. So pretty solid. We're gonna open these stacked decks in just a second, but before we do that, let's pop up the excellent next tab just to get an idea. So again, the X-alts, we hit 7 of those. We hit 21 stacked decks, 1.5c per. Chaos, obviously 1c. Remnants are about 1c, give or take. I did sell them for 1c a little while ago, so I think that holds up. Vol orbs, alts, and alchemies. So total, we are seeing about a 9.15x investment back. Now we're going to open the stacked decks and see if we can't push our luck even further, but all in all, this was actually a win. I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, this went much better than expected. I mean, pain in the butt to buy, you know, 127 gilded fossils, I can imagine, but still. All right, let's go pop these things real quick. Alrighty, Ironheart, don't fail me now. Oops. Last one. Anything cool in here? Nah. Junk. Well, minus the cost of the stacked decks, we're still in decent shape. So, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one.
Welcome to this gold record run. The goal is to break 27k gold, and there's finally Song of Mana. I had some...
落少少紅酒落去先。
我唔係初頭，我以為你個紅酒會係
飲嘅自己，之後就煮嗰陣時個能力就提升咁樣。
即係喺度煎嘅時候就附啲落去咧，係啊，整啲色水，梁少係會有呢啲色水嘅。
大佬啊，嗰啲明火先做到嘅喎。
Golden Ramsay 嗰啲先做嘅咋。
大佬，咁啊係咁以蒸發下啲酒精嘅時候咧，咁我哋就
呢個茄汁你都要用。
係啊。
哦。紅酒嘅味道係好臭嘅。
係啊。茄汁。
哇！
因為咧點解咧？因為呢個咧始終都係一個啖啖肉嘅嘢咧，你有啲酸酸甜甜嘅嘢咧。
成支落晒㗎喎先。
令佢冇咁，哇！屌你老母！
我鳩啊，留翻啲嚟不如。
得㗎啦。
我叫你買喎，你用晒我唔知喎。咁大喎。
哇！臭上加臭喎！而家紅酒加茄汁，紅酒加茄汁，嗰4字詞語，臭上加臭。師兄啊！
聞到啊！嗱，如果你可以咧，如果你加少少椰汁落去嘅，咁啊成件事就會椰汁好似多咗。
好撚臭啊！
試下味先。
試個小味就咁嗒一嗒咪得咯，你嗒筷子啦。
我聽日出嚟成個人紅酒味啊！
Golden 戈登央潮啊！
聽日醉咗，我瞓喺度醉緊咗。
誒唔會嘅，啲酒應該揮發咗啊！
仲有根。
日式點解會落紅酒？好似爭啲喎又。
嚇日式。
美式先要加紅酒啊！
唔係㗎，唔係有啲日西餐，即係日西嘅菜式咯。
西哦。
西啊！
係好多日西菜式都。
唔係茄汁同紅酒好細。
真係
太撚多茄汁啦。
咁啊！
茄汁。
茄汁，想落翻多啲紅酒咧，
可能要。
可能要。或者你茄汁應該會幫手收水嘅，
又再調整一下，
調整下咯。
佢半支茄汁落咗落去。
不過臭街唔使錢咯，一味屋落去。屌佢老母！但係茄汁都香嘅，其實。哇！但係其實呢啲酒咧，一煮耐咗就揮發晒，你係會冇紅酒味㗎。
係啊。
其實你煮緊茄汁。
係咯，因為最終揮發晒都係唔會有紅酒味。
係咯。
落啲糖可能會好啲嘅，有可能攞嚟食啫。
我仆街落咗去生
冇事，抌咗呢個。抹一抹再嚟過。
抹一抹冇事。
抹一抹就冇咗個生㗎啦。
係咯。
可以。試一試個小味先啊！
好似都係。睇下先。
會即刻揦一揦先。
咦？好似
係中咗啦，好。
係生肉味。
生肉嘅味道咯。
OK 啦。
OK 啦。
其實咧，佢茄汁同紅酒嘅份量咁多咧，再加埋頭先剩低嗰一碟嘅嗰啲肉，所謂嘅肉汁咧，
完全食唔到肉汁㗎啦，應該係。
佢個肉汁係比我想象中咧係
少嘅
少咗嘅。
要淋上去㗎咯喎。
試
咧。係跟住咧。
咁就
你擺喺呢度淋啦，擺上去淋。
咁就完成㗎啦。你哋
係
想
上喎。
側令上。
一邊。
淋一邊。淋㗎啦咩？哇！哇！芝士咧？
芝士呢個時候咧就落另一邊啦，但係好似唔撚熱喎，算撚數啦，唔要啊！唔要。
嚇！
佢唔熱啦，而家落冇用啊。
頭先煎緊嘅時候應該鋪上去啦嘛。
係啦。
是但啦，嚟啊！
嚟咯，試食
咯喎。
多咗。
Oh my fucking god！點食法？
刀得呢個刀啊，要洗一洗。
喂，咪先唔該。
屌老妹用個油淋啦。
加你5分先，想直接食一塊芝士先唔
呢個係冇乜芝士味，呢個係嗰啲叫水牛芝士啊。
哦，識水嘢嚟嘅啫。
水牛芝士就係貨拉絲肉。所以
點解你唔加喺入邊咁樣一咬出嚟？
未試過唔敢。
哦。咁你一切係咪入邊有芝士啊？咁你就可以做一切即係打開。
係啊，再 input 化咯之後。好。已經直接鋪上去。
係啊。我自己加。
嚇？
唔用係冇乜 feel 喎。
係喎，不建議喎，好輕微。我哋鋪一陣可能都會用到嘅，室溫狀態下都會用到少少嘅。
生冷氣。
沙冷氣空。OK。
試咗呢個先啦。
自己嚟啦喎。
我試啊。
我知啦。
芝士啊呢啲位。
要留翻對筷子嚟好，我哋用撚晒喎。
咁啊，你轉頭用翻呢個咯。
我屌你！
睇下先。
喂，因為佢倒啲紅色汁上去咧，就係遮住入邊唔熟嗰個情況啊，係個汁嚟嘅。係餐肉嚟嘅，餐肉嚟嘅。
見到啦，熟嘅。你見到少少粉紅色呢啲咧？嗱，你從正常物理學角度嚟睇咧，佢唔會係呢個位無啦啦粉紅色㗎嘛。佢最多係深嘅位。
知㗎啦，餐肉啊嘛。
所以呢個位咧係餐肉。
係餐肉嚟㗎啦。
係嘅。
見到？好喂，咁啊。
擺呢度切啊嘛。試一嚿先啦。
試下先啦，冇講咁多廢話啦。
有㗎啦。
想試咯，但唔係好似因為咧佢呢個
太細嚿。
呢個好好怕咧，有一個特色，入口即溶， 做嗰個感覺啊，
係
嗰個感受啊，
係
一放入口咧，啊未 feel 到個味已經溶咗，
已經溶咗，落咗和牛係咪？
呢個冇錯。
就係你
我頭
想做嗰
先嗰陣
個。
和
唔係真事啊！和牛免治牛肉。
免治和牛啊！
睇下先，
新佢啊，應該唔會係嘅。咁
牛，
等苦，
你食到和牛嘅感覺，澳洲和牛，
免治和牛啊！
切多嚿，
見到咁啦，
大嚿少少啦。你話想做有嗰個。
得咯。
OK。有咗
大啖拍落去咯喎，係咪想撈飯食？
好腍真係，好腍。
係啊！
同埋好分到個有唔同嘅感覺。
誒，
都食得着，真係食得着，有牛味
有兩種肉就係咁
同埋牛味都重啊，都重啊嗰個感覺。咁咧仲有咧，
互相抗衡緊啦，牛味同
係啦
埋午餐肉味。
同埋咧
口
最後
入邊
最後咧佢點嗰個汁咧冇想象中咁。
係咩？
係啊，點會難食啊？
因為其實係咪都係普遍係茄汁咯，變咗係食落
茄汁味好重嘅
係，
但係咧都有少少紅。
有少少紅酒添，味精發得
唔係
晒。
如果有好難兼汁咧，再好啲。但係又係好撚難揾兼汁。誒，
咪笑，
咪笑，
我試一嚿先。
試一試不如。
試下先。
加啲汁好啲喎。
我覺得如果中間係有芝士嘅話，真係
流心芝士啊！
係啊，會
咁大鑊
喂，其實咧，我係原本係預係咁，但係頭先俾你嘈到勁撚幫，我係幫緊嘅。
OK。
話乜濕？點啊，師兄，笑唔笑得出啊？
但係我覺得佢冇咗個正常嗰個咬口咯，
冇咗個口感，因為佢真係入口即溶。
太腍啦。
嗱，你睇下夠唔翻啊？佢黐
和牛
散咗。
使鬼啊！和牛啊嘛，和牛就係要入口即溶啦。美國牛就話要咬啫，和牛就係。
成嚿拍喎，
可以。
但係都真係有午餐肉嘅味道嘅。
有啊。
有啊，
OK
你慢慢食到咯，
有嘅，
就係咁。
就係咁。
要食今天的
OK，暫時試咗個味嘅，暫時都未。
芝士嗰個咧，你要切埋啊？但係佢溶晒喎，好似。
用唔到啊！你而家就即刻試埋咯。
喂。呢個
應該冇乜分別嘅啫。
呢個好食。
呢個好食少少，
喂，實少少。
濕少少
可能。搭多咗，搭多咗啊嘛。
呢個好食少少。入邊咧，實得嚟有種食緊吞拿魚 feel 嗰種感覺。
啊！
嚇？
冇錯，呢個就係我想俾你。
喂！
呢個就係我想俾你感覺。吞拿魚喺邊度嘅？邊個國家最出名？日本。日本藍鰭吞拿魚
用灌烹肉做咗出嚟。
做到。
花撚到。
呢個認真，我
因
等咗你
為呢個咧
成晚。，
其實呢個好有一個最重大嘅缺點，
係
入面好濕啊！
係
即係咧，佢唔係肉汁嗰種濕啊，佢一咬落去咧，
係就冇
出
咗咯。
水嗰種感覺啊
頭，先我食就係嘅，
好
腍
濕，勁腍，
係
一劈嘢咁樣。即係咧，衰啲講句咧，外層係一嚿實嘅嘢啦，入邊好似有動物。
係似嘅。
嗰個 feel 咧，好嗰個感覺咧，唔係太好啊。
係。
啊，跟住咧，再加埋即係出邊嗰啲紅酒啊、茄汁咧，鬼馬路。
哇！突然間
多咗
踩落
但係咧，呢一個咧，佢實翻少少之後咧，但係佢當然都係有啲水。點解佢會似即係罐頭嗰種吞拿魚咧？
係
就係因為佢係有少少水分喺邊，但係佢唔多，
係。
佢就有少少似嗰啲水浸嗰啲吞拿魚，味道唔算話好重，係啊，但係咧食落去咧都會有散嗰種口感。但係相比之下咧，呢個實啲，同埋有少少芝士我加咗落去咧，係有少少係升華有少少。我幾中意呢一邊呢一個，但係我估唔到你兩個咁樣擺埋一齊煎，
兩個口感。
係兩個完全。
呢個就係廚師嘅功力。喺煮之前，呢個搭法。
哦， 一個係搭多少少，
又搭一個係
一個就係哦。
又到搭，一個係硬生生。
OK，咁呢一個餸叫咩名咧？
屌你老母塞爆漢堡，係要拜呢啲啊！
我寧願你叫屌你老母蓋世漢堡。
哇！
漢堡
師兄啊，有啲棘啊！不過就楊少今日嘅漢堡就完成啦吧
OK， 到你啦喎，我睇你點。
你可唔可以清一清呢個牆俾我先啊？
留俾你用㗎啦。你要咩啊？而家
你執得咁靚。
你而家要咩啊？你而家你要呢個？
我要算啦，
呢個汁你要唔要啊？留俾你啦。
唔要啊，師兄啊，我洗一洗呢個先。
個煎 pan 你要㗎嘛？
煎 pan 要。喂，咪煎 pan 唔要啊？
煎 pan 唔要啊？咁啊，等輸咗嗰個洗咯。我期待啊，米少嗰個點樣炒啊？好。咁啊，呢個留翻屋企啦。
OK，可以。不過我覺得計埋如果上個禮拜上次嗰個雞翼嘅話，呢個好食啲。
呢個好食過，
呢個好食過。
即係你會評分高喎。
我評分會高過個雞翼啦，已經。
呢個就係捉評判口味嗰個重點啦。
係。唔係我而家就算完咗咧，我都會有少少衝動想再拍多啖，因為佢真係有種嗰種啖肉嗰個 feel 啊。
係咯。
就係拍中咗你中意食嘅
係
肉。
啊！想成嘢就拍落去成嚿咁樣。
咁嗰個你可以食嘅喎，食晒佢喎，你可以。
嗰半嚿就直接懟落去。
等先啊，跟住我
計劃
同洗隻碟嚟玩下，用晒
我而家執緊我啲嘢啊，費事阻住你啊嘛。
我洗咗埋佢啦。
你有埋咩哈魯啱啱哈魯。
好，咁啊。
我覺得喺 chat room 嗰個 Elma 咧，
好唔同，
好唔同嘅同啲真人。
所以我哋咪可能以為係假嘅。
係啊，好搶口啦。
係，好。
同埋好多嘢講。
唔係佢真人都多嘢講嘅，但係佢
冇咁搶口。
唔係啦，咁佢 chat room 嗰啲咧再 bullshit 啲嘅。
係。
基本上係少少唔同人格㗎啦。
係啊，少少可能要睇一睇啲。
係，咁啊，米少用嘅，好，唔使怕醜喎，亦 Sir，俾你過去食埋。
唔使。
你想留肚啊？試下
留一
米燒
留，係啊！我想睇下米燒啊，因為佢話佢自己個餸菜個難度高，嚇難度係數有7分，咁啊炒嘅機會率50/50，咁啊
睇佢成功咗就加好多分嘅。
係。
不過我都幾撚奇，應該用呢個廚具。
你都知佢煮咩？
我知佢煮咩，因為我哋驚咧，到最後咧，大家撞咗。雖然難啲。
因為華已經俾咗分喎，0分喎兩次。
我冇講過笑話喎，但係。
唔係。
係咪仲有一隻碗啊？
嚇！
白色嘅碗。有啦。哎呀！
好。
兩隻都要用啊，洗埋先。
幫你抹乾淨啲碗啦。
可以。
咁啊，其實都唔難估㗎啦，佢嗰個。
係。
唔知 chat room 有冇人估到咧？
佢都冇介紹過佢嗰啲。
佢要洋葱碎啦，有飯啦，而家你有嘅資訊係。
哦，洋葱碎加飯。
飯。
咁我午餐肉一定要有啦。
係。
係冇理由係炒飯嘅喎。
咩啊？
嗯。
咩啊？咩事？
洋葱碎加飯。
喂！做咩已經爆咗我嗰個出嚟啊？
未知。
好簡，而家你暫時。
喂，我嗰個其實你好普通，真係好普通。你去到日本街頭，基本上你盲指一間餐廳入到去都會有嘅一道菜式嚟㗎啦。
洋葱碎加飯，加茄汁。
我想講你呢個煲太高啊！
其實係高得
我
滯。
好難去。
不如我試下我試下用煎 pan 可唔可以做到咧？應該都得嘅煎 pan。
洋葱碎加飯加茄汁已經係嗰啲西炒飯嗰啲 friend。
有啲 sense。
有少少 sense 嘛。
嗱，認真，我而家調一調個角度，應該會好睇好多。
你試一試啊！
我寧願調角度都唔好換鑊鏟，因為我想睇你用呢個點樣整啊！
唔係，因為其實我係揀無可揀，我先用呢個㗎咋。
嚇？
係啊。
有鑊鏟你都唔揀？
係嗰個，因為我係 用煎 pan 反而我未必做到，用呢個我勉強都做到出嚟。
影到少少出邊嗰啲貨喎，
嗱我哋可以講一講喎，講埋都得喎。
多撚套
我把餐刀咧，仆街去咗嗰度。唉，使埋呢度用啦。
咁樣會睇得好啲。我哋呢幾日咧會再處理嘅呢啲貨，因為哇太大量啦，啲人有講，我哋人手又少咧。
唔係主要係我哋太懶啊，
都係
工時唔想太長，
真係
係啊，呢個係重點。
靠光機先。
Elma 殺得盛氣，好多人俾 Elma ban 咗。
因為佢哋係中意俾人 ban，
係啊
因為可唔可以 ban 我？
因為會唔會玩壞咗㗎？
M 屬性嘅嗰啲。
好，
好米少
係點樣咧？
到你啦喎。
嚟啦！咁我首先就將啲餐肉就處理下先。
係。
個波會唔會遮晒啊？而家嗰啲動作。
你可以喺呢度切喎嗰啲，你個煲攞撚開先好唔好？
暫時擺埋一邊先不如。
咁樣啦。你攞個。
呢度切。
可以。
可以。咁啊，處理咗餐肉先啦。咁啊，餐肉都係切粒嘅啫。咁我費事整污糟隻手啦。咁我就單手搞佢啦。
呢個就係嗰個
嗱
提數。
唔係，唔係呢度，唔係師兄啊。
呢個位
星
就係呢一度。
單手切餐肉。
唔係啊，
師兄
啊，
點樣炒啊？
尊重啊，師兄啊。
炒個位係。
好易炒。
唔係，
難撚到。
真係難嘅，睇你都忍住用左手輔助啦。
梗係啦，都要輔助少少嘅。唔係我嗰個，即係其實嗰個咧，你望落好簡單，
係。
但係咧嗰個
簡單嘅嘢係真係好越難做出水準，呢個係真嘅。
炒車嗰個機會率係接近90%咯，但係
我哋先話50
90%。
唔係，即係佢炒車個機會率係去到90%嘅，但係我難到去到50-50。
哦，
係啦，
已經好盡㗎。
正常人就90%炒嘅。
係啦。
OK。
同埋嗰個真係你要喺呢個咁嘅器材底下咧，係好難真係做到。
再減多幾成。
真係。
係喎。
但係我屋企都試過啦，係間粗都做到個效果嘅，係啦。但係呢度就未試過。好，咁我餐肉嘅部分就完成切粒，切粒就夠啦咁樣。
呢個就係難度係數7分嗰個位。
佔咗5分呢度。
咁啊，我哋呢個話到明係日本街頭都會有嘅嘢啦。咁我首先做一樣嘢先，
喂，師兄，冇事，俾啲肉汁嘅精華嚟嘅。
咁啊，因為時間嘅關係咧，我哋早喺半個鐘之前咧，就已經係煮定一煲飯㗎啦。
係，等佢乾埋少少添㗎啦，咁就
方便我接下來嘅工作啊嘛。
好。
所以咧，陣間如果你知你想食飯嘅，呢度係有嘅。
幾好啊！
俾你送埋你嗰個漢堡扒。嚇咁啊！
飯
飯啊！
好。
咁啊，煲飯就
煲得幾好啊！
煲飯就唔使教啦，係咪？咁基本嘅嘢。
大家唔識煲
係咪先
可以睇翻呢個《米爺廚房》第3集。
不過咧，煲飯其實最好都用隔夜飯會好炒啲嘅。
唔係，其實咧，我呢個位我聽過
係可以斟
有另一派嘅。
都有
咧。
即係其實隔夜飯冇新鮮飯咁好。
嚇？
係咩？
點解咧？
因為我食開係炒隔夜飯。
因為我自己咧試過，因為我細個唔識啊嘛，我咧就煲完個飯，我咧想煮炒飯，煲完個飯之後咧就掉落去炒。
唔係我知，你係煲得太濕。一嚟啦，你煲得太濕，你要比平時嘅飯你煲乾少少。
係。
乾身少少，之後攤凍翻少少，但係嗰個狀態咧，聽人講係好過隔。聽講。
好，咁啊呢個時間就落翻個 credit 俾梁少啦，幫我切咗少少洋葱。呢個位我哋就係炒一炒個洋葱先㗎啦。
我哋雖然係競爭嘅關係，但係呢啲小事嚟嘅啫。
小事。咁我哋就攞一攞個油先啦。
好似你把口咁。
冇錯。好。咁其實咧整呢度嘢咧，我都擔心會炒車嘅。 係啦，因為其實嗰個
好耐啦，你
因為
係啊，開頭
炒車你唔知講
因為其實嗰個炒車率真係好高嘅，同埋咧嗰個精髓就係喺嗰度，一炒咗車咧，成份嘢就可以收隊㗎啦。
可以再做，我成排打。
有嘅，係啦，咁我都諗住睇下可唔可以喺度順便做個 practice， 炒一次再整，因為好快嘅啫，可以嘅。
一剔就 fail，
一剔 fail 就唔緊要嘅，兩剔 pass 啦咁就。
咁我哋用晒啲蛋都
可以。
喂，咁已經開晒股咁滯㗎咯喎。
咁係咩咧？
用埋蛋就成。
會。
又日升，
又日升。
唔係喎，咁但係嗰隻都有好多。
有茄汁。
咁嗰隻都有好多唔同嘅玩法㗎喎。
茄汁佢都爆咗啦。
係啊。係咯。
嗰個都有好多唔同嘅玩法㗎嘛。
我可以雪坤啊呢㗎啦呢個位又。
係喎，又要玩。
好，咁啊落少少地洋葱啦。
使唔使自己切多啲啊？
夠㗎啦，攞少少味道嘅就都係。好啊，其實攞呢個嚟炒嘢都幾撚棘嘅。不過咧，我貪佢都係一個易結鑊啦。咁易結鑊其實做咩都得嘅，基本上。
係啊。
係，因為我費事洗嗰個啦嘛。
係。
咁佢呢個煲我都會用嘅，咁啊所以就一次過啦。就係咁咯。
有人問應該唔係蛋包飯啊嘛？應該唔係㗎嘛？
即係我做嘅
時候你着埋女服裝咧，可能就
加分喎。
這個加分。
加分咯。
好，咁洋葱咧，佢炒到有少少味道出嚟啦，已經。係。呢個位咧就可以落埋頭先嘅手切餐肉。
手切。呢個認真餐肉攞嚟炒嗰先咧，好定。煎啊炒啊，已經好難。
係啊，太屈機啊！
好撚香。
本身呢一個煮法咧，
餐肉你係冇可能蒸啦，冇可能叮啦，冇可能點嘅，一定係煎。
呢個午餐肉嘅煮法係必定係咁樣㗎，
冇錯。
但係略年少咗啲創意啦。
咩創意咧？
你就咁用翻佢最普通嘅整法。
就係最普通嘅整法咯。冇錯。得㗎啦，師兄。你都係最後尾係講求嗰個味道啫嘛。同埋我覺得咧，餐肉已經變咗係呢個配菜嘅呢道菜嘅配角啦，變喂，因為
自斷雙臂
冇事，因為咧
配角我又聽到啦。
因為我嘅心目中咧
係
佢係會被收埋、被隱藏嘅，成道食材最後係會
連配角都冇得做。
冇錯，
即係茄喱啡。
跟住你要一刀切開佢，佢就會反出喺你嘅眼前。
係。冇錯。粉紅色嘅肉。
冇錯，到最後會係點咧？咁樣可以，咁啊見到佢都差不多啦，有個香味就會出嚟啦。
細色唔係太對喎。
點解唔對咧？會咁。咁呢個位就可以落埋個飯㗎啦嘛。
咁啊真係炒飯㗎啦嘛。
好啦，咁啊。
其實我覺得係幾好攞呢個嚟炒，
因為佢唔
你建
會
議攞嗰個咯，可以壓碎呢啲。
都係筷子好撚棘嘅。
我覺得會飛出去啊！仲有咧，佢嗰個筷子咧做唔到嗰個炒嘅動作喎。
因為我哋嗰個資源有限啊，所以就用最少嘅資源咧就。
俾 Elma ban 咗我開心。
嚇！Elma 又喺度玩爛咗個台。
哇！啲午餐肉邊度哇？
係咪好香？
係啊。
喂，其實咧我
煎午餐肉真係最完美嘅。
即係我覺得其實呢道餸咧可以稱之為日本人嘅碟頭飯咯。即係我今日做嗰道嘢啊，都講埋俾大家知，大家都估到啦。
碟頭飯你可能誤會咗碟頭飯嘅嗰個原則。係。碟頭飯原則就係唔使再煮，直接有人叫，跟住
就淋上去，不一盒飯，整啲餸上去。
呢個咁樣咪自變身價咯，咪笑
都啱嘅。
真係你明明係高級啲㗎嘛。
要準備。
唔緊要嘅，我份人就係咁謙虛啦嘛。係啊。好，咁跟住就重點嚟㗎咯喎，都未到嘅，仲未嚟。
重點嚟㗎，未到。
講笑啫。跟住就要落茄汁。
茄汁係啦。
咁我就唔會好似兩條咁樣嘅少
西炒飯。
試一試個味道先，我唔會試味㗎啦，攞我識嘅啫，其實呢個都係。
識水嘢。
冇錯。好。咁啊，個色其實都差唔多嘅，撈埋嘅喎。
可以再多啲色。
再 再多少少啊？
係咯，如果西炒飯嚟講未夠。
呢個唔係西炒飯嚟
可以
嘅，師兄。
唔係啊，蛋炒飯個淡值度好似係西炒飯。
係咯，係咯。
因為我就係唔想佢
茄汁
變到
加炒
咁
飯就係西
濕
炒飯
啊。
咯。
是是啊，但係佢呢個係
濕。
係啦，冇錯。因為其實我唔中意食咁濕嘅炒飯，不過我好少會食濕炒飯。你哋會唔會咧？
我都其實濕炒飯好少有嘅，一嚟就係福建炒飯啦。
係。福建
西
係
炒飯
嗰啲意大利飯㗎啦。
我覺得
如果你話濕
少少咯
嘅話咧，
濕飯。
係啊，因為你一炒飯一定係一平平，因為你粒粒分明嗰種。
我麻麻地西炒飯，我本人。
我都係。
誒，
我叫飯咧，一定係叫啲
哇
揚州炒飯啊，
我以為爆啊，唔知做乜嘢你咁樣篤過去啊。
鹹魚雞粒炒飯啊嗰啲咧，即係我覺得炒飯夾少少甜酸酸就爭啲。
誒，濕咗少少啊，見到濕翻少少。
但係女僕餐廳冇啊，一定要
係啊。
一定係食呢隻蛋包飯。
好，咁我今次咧都係用埋呢個特上嘅珍珠米嘅。
誒
特上
珍珠，好，咁個飯就基本上係完成
係有
㗎啦
見到㗎啦。
係啦，
邊度啊？
見到啲咩咧？輪少。
你個米咯。
好，咁我哋就畢飯先啦，攞翻呢個碗。
哇！
應該一碗就啱啱好㗎啦。
喂！
哇！就咁已經好食啦，師兄啊！
係咩？咁唔使放落肚嘅，就咁已經好食。呢個形容幾有趣。
幾快㗎啦喎，係咪先？你係咪？
完成啊！
嚇，未嘅，冷靜啲先。
係咪好關鍵啊？呢個位。
未到，差唔多。呢個都係一個關鍵位嚟。我哋講擺盤㗎嘛。咁啊。係。好。
喂。
係嘛？
整成一個碗形嘅飯。
係必須嘅，其實。
呢個係啊，我覺得成個。
但係我驚而家開咧，佢就會散喎。
拖多陣就散喎，你擺多陣先，成件事好食好多嘅。如果你個飯又好碗形，
靚仔啲係嘛？
係，就算你白飯都好咧，你白飯之後咧有個碗裝住啦，跟住你揾個筆咧，跟住喺度硬到佢變成一個圓拱形咧，成件事個
吸出嚟，唔係真係成件事升華10倍。你會覺得咧，你唔係食嗰啲頹飯，個觀感好好多㗎。
冇錯。
你覺得呢一餐咧，你唔係因為為咗醫肚而食嘅，
係，
你為咗享受
冇錯，係有擺盤。
係啊。
哦，
擺咗動作都唔係。
喂，米少，我呢得，哇！你嘥咗啲麵油啊，你可以攞埋啲麵油去炒啊嘛。
喂，可以喎，其實真係。
唔係話加得多嘢就好嘅，有音啦。咁啊，佢冇搶撚咗個午餐肉咯。
冇錯。我就知道梁 Sir 想陰臭嘅。
不
不過俾面佢咧，我就附和下佢啦。好。咁啊，呢個
下一步驟咯，係嘛？
下一個步驟亦都係我今晚講咗最耐嘅一個步驟啦。
O.K. 考車位難度係數7，50-50嘅機會率，究竟？
同埋我要用埋呢一個爐啦，再加呢一個煲啦，
係。
去做呢一件事咧。
我驚你呢一下成功咗發揚光大，攞呢個煲嚟煮呢個蛋包飯。
打個蛋先啊 ，OK。
睇唔到啊！
打蛋唔使睇啦。
要啊！睇下你有冇蛋碎啊！都冇分位嚟㗎。
都係。好。咁啊。
好。
O.K.
咁啊，基本上用呢個。
可以，你攞呢個炒呢個。
咁我哋打個小蛋先啦。
好，米少終於係由零開始啊！
由零。
係啊。
唔係因為呢個快嘅，
係。
呢個可以快嘅。
不敢直視喎，咩意思啊？
點會唔用煎 pan 啊？得㗎，因為我有嗰個秘方喺，冇錯。反而煎 pan 嗰個成功率仲會低啲。
真係。
我試
同埋好
過。
亞視嘅。
係。
好。咁啊嚟啊，攞個煲落嚟先。
煎 pan 真係好重亞視味。
係啊。
浸咗咁多年都係仲有陣亞視。
爭啲炒我。
屌你陳展鵬啊嘛，戇鳩！唔係我已經唔撚出聲㗎啦。
爭啲針咗。
師兄啊， 我等緊你救佢啊！我唔使救啊！你明唔明啊？啊，好啊，嚟㗎咯喎！
好嚟啊！
試一試，因為其實咧呢個係好講火候啊。其實咧做呢個咧，我係勸大家咧必須要用明火去做，
明火
一定明火做嘅。
嗰啲有自斷雙臂嘅。
係啦，咁但係如果你用電磁爐做到嘅話咧，證明你係已經係冇
我
錯。
有瘋狂 set 個規限嘅嘢咧，
係啊，
突破埋啊！
突破限制啊嘛。
係啊，即係有尖輕唔用，要用呢
係啊，
個。
用開鍋。嗱，你如果冇尖聽唔緊要，用呢個鍋，但係用尖聽後面。跟住咧，第二咧就係用明火啦。嗱，佢用咗電池，再用再。
有樣雙臂啊！
自斷先啦。
自製加分為
但係技巧嚟嘅，技巧嚟嘅。呢啲位會俾佢加價。你會 feel 到佢有個難處喺度。
即係每次煮餸之前咧，呢道餸咧最好咧，其實係用明火。
係啦係啦。
但我就唔用明火咯。
係啦。
嗱，其實我哋冇得用明火。我想買個 gas 爐啊，咁啊已經。但係冇理由為咗一道餸又大費周章啊嘛，係咪先
？gas 爐都好嘅，gas 爐。
好，咁啊呢個動作我哋即刻落咗先。
好。
好啊，落完咧，基本上就即刻回鑊㗎啦，要。
回鑊。
咁樣係攞翻落嚟先。
冇人睇到喎。
好，咁啊，因為我即刻抌咗落去咧，再攞翻落嚟。係啦。
哇！係。
好，好緊要嘅。
鑊以為係嗰啲咩？
再打一鑊。
哇！係啊，再打一鑊，真係未見過呢種喎。
呢個
真係有啲料喎。
再打一鑊。打一鑊嘅效果係令佢啲蛋皮呢到最後出嚟嗰個效果咧，你會明白㗎啦。我最後劏開嗰下，你就會知㗎啦。
哇！
街啦。
有啲感覺喎。
街啦。
好，跟住又要開火啦。好。
少期待係即係外邊係實，之後咧一劏就。
我研究咗好耐㗎啦，呢個已經。
好撚癲喎！
我研究咗好耐㗎啦，實不相。
講真，
係。
呢一個喺鏡頭面前
加爆分。
加爆分喎。
所以話個炒飯同個餐肉已經唔係主角。
我有一個頭頂有個大耳子嘅。
係啊。
叮咚叮咚叮咚咁係。
冇事嘅，我覺得你。
我唯一轉頭再講啦。
好。
好多油喎。
得㗎啦。雞
健康。
雞蛋啊，索油啊，因為。
係。
我話呢一道菜咧，最緊要係真係嗰個火候掌控得好，同埋咧呢個煲我試下先。OK，呢個煲邊好似未夠熱，因為我轉頭係會用呢個煲邊。
唔係真
用呢一
事
個煲
啊
邊慢慢去玩嘅。
！Oh my god！
哇！係。你好撚癲喎你
應該差唔多啦，應該差唔多。
你會唔會話煲病㗎？
應該唔會。
應該唔會嘅。
好，咁呢個位咧就倒落去啦，好翻去啦。嗱，即刻唔好嘥時間啦喎，要咁樣斜一斜，試一試先啦，因為都
你個人可以打斜啲嘅。
唔好
唔好騷擾住先，師兄。好，
完㗎啦。
未完㗎。好，
等先。
係點樣
我頂唔順啊！我攞部 cam handheld。
喂，唔好啊！
嚇？
呢啲位你唔好搞咁多嘢先。
人都睇唔到啊！
好啦，呢個煲已經唔夠熱傾大緊喎，飆到炒啦！
我太得閒啦。
攞翻個熱度出嚟先啊，要。
好。好，大家而家為你直擊報導米少整嘅蛋包飯啊！而家整緊個皮嘅，希望我就冇咩啦，冇整。
其實都錯咗少少部分啦，因為咧佢利用呢個煲邊個特性咧，就係有一個彎。
冇錯，我就係做緊嗰個效果出嚟。
係啊。
我屋企咧係有成功過一次嘅。
係。
係啦。所以咧，我覺得咧可能要 take two 啊。暫時睇落個情況唔係太好啊。
太樂觀啦。
冇錯。
好。睇翻我。
因為佢 keep 唔到個火啊喺度啊。
好，唔緊要，扣少少分啫，再嚟過啦。
冇事冇事，試 試下可唔可以再撻
睇下
翻
條唔條影到作為一個廚師。
試下呢邊啊，而家要。
keep up 啊，喂，睇少。
好似熟撚晒啦。
係啊，但係佢入邊唔熟啊嘛，入邊爭少少，其實佢皮係得咗㗎啦已經。我試下先，我試下先，呢個位
仲係有得救嘅，或者未證實死亡嘅。
你寫得細。
好。
呢個位有啲危喎喂！
你個頭頂又有個危機啊！
到我有危啊師兄，等先啊，因為咧
叮咚，
試下就咁擺
你
落去。
開過啊又？嚇
嚟咯
咁撚癲？
喎，嚟咯喎！你擺咗之後，你好難拎翻走喎。
係咯，喂，你諗清楚
有冇
喎。
拎到啊？
你使唔使拎到先？
呢個位都好啊！
點解啊？
我試多個，我試多個，
好嘅，
呢個棄咗先，
好嘅先。
因為我都想完成佢啊。
冇事冇事，大家
喂
暫停先。頭先嗰個少少波幅啫。
但係其實係都做到啊！佢係嗱，呢個面係做到㗎。
冇人睇到啊！我而家
即係喺度界開佢咧，就係
而家試下戒一戒睇有冇機會。
應該有嘅。
你試下咯。
試戒。
咁樣咧，
手震
唔係啊，因為而家冇個飯頂住咧，嗱，你見到入邊啊？咁樣撈開佢，如果你喺度鋪喺面咧，解開佢就
少少嘅，少少嘅，平心而論少少嘅。
有嘅，師兄係有嘅，但係咧
俾你度做多次，
做多次，研究多一次，
俾你做多次。
喂，等先。
點啊？
因為我上網睇咧，好撚癲嘅嗰個係脹卜卜咁樣咧，佢一戒咧好似就想爆出嚟。
冇錯。
我等住啦，即係鹹入邊好多嘢想衝出嚟。
哎呀，好撚癲嘅嗰個。
其實好難㗎，我覺得。
誒，咁50-50嚟講，你已經冇
用咗一次咯，
用咗一次。
所以就呢一次係一定得咯，50-50
一次
就係一次炒，一次就。
因為練到50-50㗎啦嘛。如果唔係就即係單呢㗎咯喎。
我唔係，佢咧就做4次，有兩次炒，兩次得，咁都係50-50喎。咁啱係頭呢兩次
喂
炒。，
我做10次有5次得，5次炒都係㗎，係咪先？
都啱啊
可能要做到2次就。
又可以繼續用，
好。
又要再嚟一鑊啦喎！
其實咧，因為
我哋欣賞下米少呢個炒飯先。其實就午餐肉西炒飯嚟講係粒粒分明係幾好㗎。其實揀米真係好重要。日本珍珠米炒飯咧，成個觀感咧係好正，
靚好多
靚
啊！
好多。
佢話食到嘢唔怕做得多。
其實係要嘅。
早知又買番茄啦，番茄生菜。
成件事爭好
尤其是拍嘢啊嘛，屋企就話唔緊要啫。
屋企邊度食你嗰啲番茄生菜啊，師兄？
蝕咗。
你呢度俾鏡頭食㗎嘛，所以我要搞到呢一個一刀界開爆汁嘅
效果。
其實
我諗下
好
我而家 handheld 會唔會太震，睇得太唔舒服？
會頭暈啊，我覺得。
係啦，如果有呢個問題，我就 lock 翻佢啦。到佢真係緊要時候，我先再整俾大家睇。我覺得我揸得幾穩。
咁你就揸住啦。
可以。
未夠熱，
靈魂，可以咁啊 keep 住。幾好玩。
你中意做呢樣？
做咯。好，而家咪少就試緊油溫啦，用手去。
公道講句啦，
係
用電磁爐係難啲嘅。
電潮整呢個
因為
係
佢如果去反嗰下咧，個邊嗰個位咧，佢受唔到熱啊。
係啊，所以佢頭先嗰
所以個
個位一路都
火候就要控制得更加好。
係啊，嗰個彎弧咧做唔到。
好，即刻攞落嚟啦，再打一鑊，
係頭先大家睇唔到嘅嘢。
而家再睇一次。
見到啊，係一個少少輕微個表面熟咗少少嘅蛋。
再打翻爛佢。
我轉翻自己 focus
呢度唔使影喎，師兄。
要
睇唔到啊！我唔知咩係中。
我覺得你呢個我自己屋企會想試，
點解咧？
想試一試佢究竟係做唔做得到。
即係嗰個一刀界開，跟住扮開兩邊包住，係做到嘅。我試咗啦，因為，但係好睇你屋企嗰個架步真係。
但係佢屋企都係電池喎，我覺得。
係啊，但係咪因為個煲冇咁高身，呢個邊係受到力，受到個油溫，唔係嗰個溫度嘅力。
我覺得你過咗今晚會有好多蠢咗嗰啲踢鳩你。
未必，
係咪？
因為未必會有人真係會攞呢個。其實複雜又唔複雜嘅，係好講技巧嘅呢樣嘢係，即係整呢個。
有人試，但係未必成功。
整呢個蛋包其實係
會踢你，炒咗你。
好嚟多個咯喎。
好。
炒咗就收到。
有啲人話咧，成個爐打。
可以喎呢個。
可能亦需要幫下手。
我將成個爐打。
貼住佢跟住我一齊車啊嘛！
倒轉地球啊！傳説中嘅。
真係。所以我而家係等佢烘，再等佢煲再熱啲先，個邊再熱啲，嗰邊再熱，隻手仲可以接觸到個爐咧。
應該要3個人先做到呢個動作，即係你有一個人 hold 實個煲，一個人打斜個爐，一個人真係煮咁樣。
但我驚佢會滑。
因為我而家輕輕拎一拎起佢已經
唔係你要 hold 住噶嘛，即係兩樣都 hold 住嘅。係啊，你要貼住我個爐。係。咁樣咯。係啊。係咪煮到？
咁樣可能得。咁樣可能得。
喂，梁少冇得嘅。
喂，大佬啊，好撚危險㗎。
得㗎啦。
我唔會咁樣幫對手㗎。
唔係嘛？
你幫咪
自己嚟啦，咪先。
咩？我淨係 hold 到個爐啫嘛，點樣 hold 到兩樣嘢打斜啊？
你 hold 呢個咪得咯。
我 hold 呢個。
我 hold 爐咯。
你都係得嘅。
好似係應該都得嘅。
第3隻手啊你。
嚟啦！我要你先至嚟啦。
好。喳聲啦。
等先啊！
好，睇下呢個倒轉地球煮法得唔得咯喎？
使唔使係㗎？
好，嚟啊！係啊。
即係用具係死嘅，人係生嘅。
倒轉地球啊！
倒轉咗地球啊！好似有啲 feel 喎，係 feel。50-50，咁真係50-50。
差唔多啦，等呢劈醬汁差唔多就可以㗎啦。一路都仲係 keep 到啊！咁熟多少少就得㗎呢個位。係，可以啊。好，
仆街倒轉地球真係好似
有
用喎。
有啲用啊，有啲用啊！唔好放棄啊！應該差唔多啦。
好。
好，我就要攞佢。
有啊。有啊，米少。
哇！米少嘅手好震。
真㗎，師兄。
極緊張。
佢手好震。
咁你細碗睇呢鋪啊，大佬啊！
喂，真麗英又出現喎！
麗英做咩事啊？麗英！
唔好加劇緊張氣氛。分心啊！分心啊！
我覺得可以啊，應該。
好。你咯，緊張時刻我睇你放㗎啦，咪先。
試下先。
好，focus 好。
再煮嗰陣。
Focus OK。
緊張。
我試下先，但係唔得喎，佢都係。
使唔使煮多陣？
再嚟多陣。
好，
爭啲。
出嚟。
好嘅。
咁棘啊！我想反佢啊，但係一反就出事啊！呢個位。
你煲邊唔夠熱啊？
係啊。
reset 㗎，向難度挑戰下呢個位。
咁都已經係，唔係啊？因為個底係好靚㗎。
係。
呢個底係靚嘅。試下啦，我唔理佢啦。
OK 嚟啊！喂，好似有喎，
我要睇一睇。
好似
切嗰一下啫要。
喂！
等陣先。不過咧，驚佢吸唔得成。
哇！
試下咯喎。
等啊，我攞個靚角度
邊個角度靚啲啊？
你咁樣至得唔得？呢度拖過去。
啊，邊度拖啊？
呢度拖過去。好嚟啊！等。好。
嚟㗎咯
好嚟啊！
feel 有 feel 有 feel 有 feel，
係咪爭咁啲 BGM 啊呢度？
真係
喂，師兄爭啲啊！個蛋皮熟得滯啦，但係
喂，你唔講冇人知㗎。
就咁啦。
唔係有 feel 講真，有 feel 有 feel
我哋頭先玩得太耐啦，
真係
玩得太耐啦。
熟得少少，
如果咧佢蛋皮望熟咧，一撇開咧，
就反
自己反咗㗎啦，
自己
就會。因為我梗係成功試過一次。
好啊，O 俾我睇下先。
OK。
好。咁啊，最後嚟個呢個Porter Shot 啊，咁啊都叫唔叫成功咧？咪先7成。
七成啦，
七成都
少爭咁啲啊，真係。
七成啦，七成啦，
可以啊。咁啊，試味要咯，準備。
講真
因為
，OK。
如果靚咧，係真係見唔到個飯嘅，
我知我知
係冚晒成個。
我知我知。
好，嚟啊！
匙羹嚟先。
匙羹。
你哋下邊有冇膠？啱啱擺嘅啫。
你影我，你影我喺下面執個匙羹俾我食，仆街！黐撚線。
好。
喂，呢個真係有真麗英啊！頭先
真麗英
我見到啊，
係咩？
可以哈魯啊！咁
講咩啊？哈魯麗英你好啊！
麗英講咩啊？
哈魯啊！頭先就係見到哈魯嘅。
啊！我好喜歡麗英㗎喎。
小時最喜歡麗英。
冇錯冇錯。
都係喎。
使唔使加茄汁㗎呢個？
其實可以加少少面嘅，但係呢個咧又唔係擠嗰只咧，加落去好驚。
嗱，呢個係少少啦。嚇！再加熱粒
碎
定。
你撈勻佢咧，因為咧通常係擠咁樣擠㗎嘛。
係。
但呢個做唔到個後喎。
出咗血喎，似係個蛋。
個蛋
戒完必血嗰個感覺喎。
蛋出咗血啦。
好。係咪準備食啦，家翼？
冇錯。
其實就係蛋炒飯咯，餐蛋炒飯。哇！
咁係。
好嚟。
餐肉洋葱再加蛋，
有我去女僕 cafe 嘅感
唔係真事啊嘛？
覺。講真，
喂，喚醒翻你女僕咖啡回憶喎。
有 feel。
可以，
好食。
梁少請試啊！
想食多啖。
嚇？
講真，好食啊！好食啊！
可以開餐
好少我講好食。
係，
係啊。
洗碗佢咯，梁少妖。
好食啊！
好。
呢隻唔錯啊！
成功啊！幾好嘅。我係靠，
心贏啊！
我係靠個，我係靠。
好鳩，等先，你諗下先。你諗下先，我哋今日個主題係乜嘢先？
有午餐肉啊！
好鳩啊！直接揾個午餐肉炒飯啫喎。
師兄啊，日式午餐肉啊！
午餐肉就係午餐肉嘅最好表現。講真，擺笑出色，
我係廣州真係好食。
真係好食。
食屎咧！好食有鬼用咩？屌你炒個西炒飯，煎個午餐肉，你午餐肉煎點樣唔好食啊？
真係好食，唔係，所以我都話。
創意歸創意，但係午餐肉煎就係最好嘅。
冇錯冇錯。
屌，戇鳩啊！
觀眾話事啦。唔係，因為其實咧，我唔係靠個飯贏㗎，我靠個蛋贏㗎。
屌你個蛋都炒撚咗，
冇炒冇炒。
食屎啊！
贏咗嘅。
係數又高，
真係難㗎。
喂，我都難㗎，大佬啊！我唔使控制火候啊！嚇！
想再食，想再食。
係好食㗎，真係。
重點啊！
好嘅，你開個投票啦。
你開我唔得閒啦。
可以。你係咩話？
你咩名啊？你
我嗰個好簡單嘅啫。
係
和風餐肉紙包飯。
和風餐肉紙包飯。
係啦，餐肉跟住肉紙。
哇！
食晒啊！有冇 feel？
你食唔食得晒？
我講食晒嗰個字
真係
啊！
咁撚堅。
好食啊！
真係好食㗎，梁少，咪呃你㗎。
屌你！你午餐肉炒飯點樣唔好食啊？
我屌，你漢堡扒嚟㗎喎！
漢堡扒都要調味㗎。輸撚晒喎！睇佢反應。
冇事。你嗰個係咩啊？咩啊？屌你咩啊？嗰個叫咩啊？
屌你老母塞爆漢堡啊！我冇心情啊！
有啊。
咪要拉下片先落尾。哎！
試埋啊！
屌，我凍撚晒啦！
唔係我覺得佢真係啊，因為雖然佢真係做得唔夠完美，但係我呢啲特加個飯咧真係好似
唔係，俾叔，我哋今日個主題咧係一個 fusion 菜啊，就係日本嘅料理啦，再加午餐嘅，你知㗎啦。
個主題，
因為我哋主題嚟㗎。
真係好食啊！好食啊！好食啊！好食啊！
點食係正路。
有啲蛋汁。係啊，我哋講嗰啲蛋汁咧，係啊，好 feel。
juicy 啊！
兩笑兩笑。
好啦，凍撚。
係頭先識埋，
試埋先，試埋先。
識埋，必須食㗎，必須食㗎。
芝士嗰塊啊！
我係咯，就咁樣咬啖咯。
嗰度出嗰啲係餐肉啊，
餐肉
唔係50嘅，唔係50，唔係50。
唔好笑。
午餐肉。
好似食緊
薯蓉
太腍啦入邊。
你打得太勁啦。
等陣先，咩料啊？喂，大佬，拉票時間，我要拉票啊！
我係你拉票先啊！
我要拉票。
我食
而家，喂，等陣先，大家係咪可以重新投票㗎？
其實 OK 啊，頭先試咗一啖都可以嘅，唔係話難食，真係冇以前第1、2季嗰時咁炒車嘅。
好食過上次。
擺太多肉啦，
冇錯。
哇！
我食埋佢咯，你有冇食？
唔係幾好食嘅呢個。
你試下佢個汁先係精髓嚟嘅。有啲似我啫，有啲似嘅。
我薑薑啊！
食㗎。等陣先，我想講
係
今日最大個難度就係點樣將午餐肉同埋日式料理混和埋一齊啊嘛！喂，
混和到咯。
大佬啊，你午餐肉炒飯有鬼混和啊？
我係午餐肉蛋包飯，
兩件事嚟㗎，各位，
午餐肉
佢係冇尊重個菜規㗎。
我係有
午餐肉加日式料理點樣可以完美咁混合佢啊嘛？咁你
我就完美混合咗。
午餐肉炒飯，
你有冇
蛋上面
你有冇食過一個？
西式日式啊！
你有冇食一個蛋包飯入邊係有午餐肉
夠
先？
mix，仆你個街！你就咁整個大西炒飯就贏，屌你老母！
創意嚟啊！
創係冇創意啊，各位！
食個蛋包飯入邊係有午餐肉啊！
好啊！
嗱，我覺得咧，如果呢期有人想移民去日本嘅話咧，建議帶埋我呢個菜式。
係啦，屌你咁樣就叫 mix 埋一齊，仆街話下次直接成塊午餐肉夾埋去啦，屌你老母！
咁好喎！
我
我開頭咧以為你個漢堡扒咧係2塊午餐肉夾住個漢堡扒咧咁樣嘅，跟住咧就咁樣食。
係。
但可惜佢喺我預期之外。
真係。
唔係人認真，呢個難度分更高咯。點樣可以將嗰個午餐肉混和埋，成一個漢堡包嘅一部分？你明唔明呢件事成件事係分子料理啊？接近
簡單就係呢個。
接近分子料理，你點做啊？點樣諗啊？我認真呢個創意分。
唔係嘅，其實如果冇呢個題目咧，日本再加呢個餐肉咧，你係唔會貿貿然將餐肉撈落去一劈免治牛肉度撈嚟做漢堡。
呢個唔係正常人諗到，呢個就係創意
唔係創意啊！你俾呢個題目
啊！你咁兩件
我有創意啊！
mix
嗱，首先我創意就係將午餐肉撈咗落去呢個蛋包飯度。個難度喺邊咧？個難度就係用電磁爐加呢個高壓煲去整一個流心嘅蛋包出嚟。
唔食啦。
嗱，個天都唔幫你。
大佬啊！你咁樣睇係嘛？
天都唔幫你，
我已經拉佢票啊！佢嗰個票已經對我嚟講。
個天都唔幫你啊！
唔係，好簡單講一句，你去日式餐廳可以食到你嗰個啦，都可以食到我嗰個啦。但係你去茶記都可以食到你嗰個。
茶記點會食到嗰個啊？
茶記西炒飯咯。
茶記冇蛋包飯啊！茶記冇蛋包飯啊！
唔係認真，樓下 G04已經有。
唔係
G04。
但係佢蛋包飯入邊係唔會有餐肉咯。
唔係，成件事就係咁樣咯，你明唔明啊？你嗰個蛋包飯其實喺周街都食到啊嘛。
係啊。
係啊，但係我
你個漢堡扒都係成周街都食到㗎。
真係日式啊！喂，大家，我知道觀眾嘅眼睛係雪亮嘅，我知大家而家投咗票之後反悔，
投票啦！
唔緊要嘅，你叫埋啲親戚朋友即刻上嚟再投個，我覺得可以㗎。
喂，企得住先。
爭少少。
嗱，你聽我講一句公道説話先。
爭少少，大家。
你聽我講。
爭少少啊！告急啊！我唔係爭好多㗎咋，大家爭你一票。
你聽我講先。
有59%喎。
大家，我贏咧，其 其實就唔係贏嗰塊，
你未贏，
贏都唔係贏嗰塊嘅。
你冇
我暫時贏咧，
喂大佬，
係贏嗰個，
我係當選咧，
我係贏嗰個玉子燒啫，嗰個蛋包。
你炒
因為
咗啊！
嗰個難度係數係好
難啊！好難炒
做到啊！
你做唔到啊！
做到啊！
好難
攞出嚟啊！
我嘅話咧，佢真係好難玩呢個。咁你係咪咧？
用呢個閪煲，用呢個閪煲，係你呢個要做閪電潮，做到呢個效果，我係收貨啊！我係絕對收貨嘅。
你58%，
叫埋親戚朋友，叫埋大家姐，
大家冷靜啲先。
YouTube account 直接再投，
大家
或者可能我懷疑你登出再登入咧，可以再投。
大家，我知道你哋個眼真係雪亮，真係唔好俾佢指碌我嚟嘛。
其實好，加油！唔好講我。
其實好普通，
爭少少，大家爭你。
喂，講真，其實你個漢堡包好簡單嘅啫嘛。
簡單，你整一次啊！
喂，我第一集位嘅廚房已經係煎漢堡包。
你個漢堡包現成㗎，你仲好意思講？
係啊，認真係佢個
有邊個會真係
牛肉
將嗰啲肉啊、餐肉啊、洋葱撈埋一齊整個漢堡包？你屋企會唔會整啊？
我會
唔會整啊？你明點解啊？呢樣嘢好撚難啊！打翻屋企會唔會整啊？
係啲人覺得麻煩啫。
佢都話會試啊，明唔明啊？
喂，佢都話會整呢個玉子燒。師兄
難到分，
我呢個仲簡單啊！我呢個都好簡單㗎，師兄。
係啊，你要做，
但係你要試多幾次咯，你要試多幾次先到。喂，試下。
加油！
喂，
各位爭你嗰票。
好，咁我哋1分鐘後就收喺度，都擺咗好耐㗎喎個投票其實。
唔得。
嗱，而家49分啊嘛，去到50分。去到50分我哋就停啦嘛，去到50分我哋就
尊重呢個比賽，
即係你要講嘅嘢都講晒。
尊重呢個比賽咧，我覺得係要俾多少少時間評。
1分鐘啦，係1分鐘。
2分鐘。
Elma 喺邊度啊？Elma 講去高度笑啊！
係咯，Elma 喺邊度啊？同埋麗英喺邊度啊？有我哋不如揾 Elma 同麗英睇可唔可以？
即係客觀評述。
係咯，客觀，因為佢哋成日都想做鳩我啊，唔知點解。係啊，所以就我覺得揾個 Elma 或者揾阿麗英可以企出嚟。做公道嗰個人物就可能會好啲啲。
都可以，都可以。如果阿 Elma 應該就可以
係咪？打俾 Elma
誒，直接訪問 Elma，佢
臨尾已經走咗。
佢應該冇睇晒啊！我諗佢應該冇睇嘅。
我睇下 Cheryl 佢有冇男你知咯。
大家見到我咁誠懇嗰個眼神同埋態度咧，
爭你哋一票。
同埋你見到咧，我就算失敗咗一次之後咧，我都堅持再做第2次啊！
你而家講一講。
唔緊要㗎，一個廚師係應該要有呢一個心啊！
應該係隨機應。
你連芝士你都唔記得落啊！
芝士我係選擇唔落。
好啊！你洋葱冇觀眾提你係唔記得咗落洋葱啊！
關咩事？我
呢咁低級嘅錯誤你係唔應該犯，廚師係唔應該犯嘅。咁我咪調整咯。
你直情
我係調整，
計你呢個
我係調整，我係調整㗎。好，
有冇啊？
師兄啊，咁啊，喂，夠鐘啦喎，夠鐘，夠鐘
Jamie，
夠鐘，
仲有
喺度
仲有1分鐘，各位爭少少，奇蹟嘅1萬，
喂，
奇蹟1萬，
大家
由6-4去到幫手，另一邊嘅6-4，認真，
你睇下梁少，佢成
成
晚喺度，
你一票，
佢成晚就喺度講埋嗰啲唔知乜嘢，又話咩踩低人哋嗰個咩西炒飯，喂，你尊重啊，人哋呢一個係蛋包飯嚟㗎嘛，
邊個會諗？
話係西炒飯，已經係唔尊重對手啦。
餐肉再加免治藕成為一個漢堡，哇！我覺得如果今集出咗之後咧，會有啲日式餐廳抄，
懷疑冇啊！
會有啲日式餐廳抄。
我覺得都會有人抄我嗰個午餐肉蛋包飯。
因為本身已經係你一人抄人㗎啦。
嚇！我邊度抄人師兄？
屌你！
咁你都抄人啦！你抄我漢堡喎！
餐肉多
漢堡啫喎，師兄！你而家唔係整一個創新嘅菜式出嚟喎，你只不過係將午餐肉撈落漢堡度，即係點啊？你都識講啦，人哋咧平時會落牛肉，撈啲豬肉落去，其實你
打嚟喎，真係
嚇佢打嚟做咩啊？
有喎，OK。
喂 Elma，
喂師兄啊！我哋聽 Elma 講，
你覺得咧？你有冇睇
Elma 有冇睇？你有冇睇晒先？
我睇晒嘅。
睇晒嘅。
講真，唔係嘅，我好想投俾你，我都好想睇你贏翻一次。但係今次冇計啊！
嚇！
真係梁少贏啊！
點解咧？Elma 細一
女演員。
點解咧？我想聽
喎。你嗌我細一都冇用啊！公道麻啊！話俾你聽啊，冇人逼你用嗰個咁嘅細煲㗎嘛。
係啊。
點解有 pair 唔用啊？ 要用一個咁差嘅嘢啊！
因為煲
我唔
係見到
明啊！
聽嘅，我覺得。
梁少做足晒啊！佢明明淨係單手就已經用個手套影夠，佢唔係㗎，佢戴夠2隻手套㗎。咁所以個問題咪就喺呢一度咯，你明唔明啊？
啱嘅。
你不停咁樣，我投俾你唔係唔得，但係我要話俾你聽，如果我投咗俾你，只係因為我同情你咯，你明唔明啊？實力嚟講係，今次真係梁少咯。
cut 佢先 ，cut 佢先，cut Emma 先，cut Emma 先。再見 Emma，再見 Emma，再見。
明知
cut 唔到啊 ，cut 咗
最清晰
，cut 咗，cut 咗，cut 咗。
好清晰頭腦。
唔得唔得，佢唔夠公道，佢睇唔到點解我用呢一個煲。
係。
因為我攞呢個煲其實係咧貪佢可以深啲啊。
開頭就話呢個係劣勢嚟嘅，而家就話呢個煲
嗱，即係我表面上營造到佢係一個劣勢。
都夠鐘㗎咯，海少。
但係唔緊要啦。
時間夠。
既然梁少你咁想贏，冇所謂，我俾你贏。
我唔想洗碗啫，其實贏唔贏真係
冇所謂，我都唔想洗。
係啦。
唔係因為咧，我今日咧成功咗喺呢度咧做呢個玉子燒咧，唔係玉子燒，係呢個蛋包流心蛋包咧。我覺得我已經係有種滿足感。對唔住啦，冇錯冇錯，即係如果我失敗咗咧，咁就冇嘢好講啦。但係我覺得我自己喺度做咗呢一嚿嘢出嚟咧，對於我自己嚟講咧，都係一個成功嚟嘅。Elma 就以後唔使再嚟。
咁我哋而家完咗投票啦嘛，係咪？
冇所謂嘅，我對投票呢樣嘢已經係
打和啦，一齊死啦！
冇。
喂，我想講每次你
唔係因為 Elma 頭先講到咁樣咧，
洗嘢咧，你一個係執緊嘢嘅，其實我都係
唔係咁執嘢係方便過洗嘢嘅。咁你洗啦，你個洗洗，我執嘢啦。
始終都有嗰1%喺度㗎。
師兄啊，你死拗爛拗，做俾你初頭60%啊！係嘛，算啦。
初頭係唔係認真呢樣嘢咧？初頭係因為雞翼喺度，即係佢已經揀咗啦嘛。
係，我揀咗。
明星效應啊！
嚇！
即係正常啊。
喂，其實
因為唯一一個
唔係喎，其實我哋呢個節目開始走變咗質啦，我哋初頭都係佢做。
唔係，
我覺得變咗觀眾好似。
我係觀眾評審嘅，一半嘅。
有嘅咩？
一半嘅。係。
但係你嗰票一定係佔大票咯。
我哋以觀眾為大啊！得啦，
我算啦，冇錯，我人就比較大方嘅，冇乜所謂，因為我平時喺屋企都係做開洗碗嗰啲角色嘅。係。冇乜所謂，洗碗對我嚟講係易過食飯嘅。
冇錯，就你洗㗎啦。
咁啊，你執嘢啦，好啊。
係啊。
咁啊，下星期咪下2星期㗎啦喎，又個題目。
俾我哋打個題目先喎。
係喎。
麗英，我冇就係英啲，
冇麗英調啊，冇麗英調啊。
冇聯絡方法。
冇聯絡方法喎。
爭少少。
我哋睇下個投票率有幾高先，不如。
唔使睇㗎啦，呢個係假㗎，呢個投票率係。
哇！
係假嘅。
5140票。
咁樣咁民主嘅投票你都話假，最多。
屌你老母！失爆漢堡51%，和風餐肉紙燒包飯咧就40%。
個名都好出色。
嚇！
正式宣布今晚梁少就勝出啦。
喂，但係4150人睇緊，有5000幾人喎，但係有但係觀眾講咗出嚟咧，有4000幾人睇緊，但係有5000幾票咯。
係，唔係？但係因為其實有流動啊嘛啲人即係呢度有4000幾人，
即係最高嗰頭先有5000幾人睇緊。
冇錯，所以幾好。
唔錯啊，唔錯啊！咁我哋一定下次啊，2個星期之後咧，嗰個 JFFT 食堂究竟咧個食材主題
你諗食材先啊？
我諗食材先，我要諗下喎，真係呢個。
跟住另一半係佢哋諗係嘛？
係，或者調翻轉咯，但係佢哋做主題，話佢哋做食材，我
講真，梁少係做票。做票啊！
拉票時間拉票㗎啦。
唔係大家都可以打下睇下我有啲咩。
不過公道講啦，我係炒。我係同知即係我上次有見到啊嘛。我係今次係好撚神，因為個蛋太撚大。
型多喎！
型多好多人喎。
型多點玩啊？
型多都。
型多麼需要你啊！
型多大。
多。
型多拉 A。型多有冇 feel 啊？
型多，淨係就咁型多啊！
我同意嘅，
就咁型多啊！
型多想揾埋 Elma 先。
佢係廚神。
佢話自己煮型多。
食屎啦 Elma！上嚟炒佢皮啊我！
要唔要？我唔
Elma 表示，如果覺得個米爺嘅話咧，係贏到嘅話咧，對呢個世界都會好有作用啊！
我唔會理佢㗎啦，Elma 呢個人，我以後唔會再理佢啊。
咁啦，喂，我哋多啊，
OK，贏多，
真咩？
多，唔係咁你又係決定係
咩特咩？好難限制嗰個多代價，點解贏多好大限制嘅？係咯，
始終佢本身已經係一個
咪就係咯，
好亂成作咧。
可以再點樣將佢發展落去咧？
我覺得你要玩到好癲都可以嘅，
係，
因為你始終你即係未煮嘅時候，嗰啲係一個乾嘅產品，係可以。
或者你試下一係焗麵，
唔係贏多你可以入邊真係攞佢啲調味料都計係。
唔得，咁你成個先係贏多嚟㗎嘛，係嘛？咁你
而家就睇你個創意去到邊啊嘛。
唔係你要點樣用埋嗰啲麵？
我已經諗到啦，我已經諗到啦。
諗到啦。
但係問題係我哋未有另一個主題喎，你點諗啊？
我諗到啦，唔係另一個主題咧係咩啦？我都諗到少少啦已經。
咪先，得唔得啊？咁撚勁！
我 feel 到你同我
Elma，OK，跟 Elma 啦。
Elma 係咩啊
Elma 話贏多嘅調味料加任何食材。
即係個麵唔一定虧死
係啊，唔
嘅。
一定限死嘅，唔一定限死。
鹽多撈飯得唔得啊？
贏多炒西炒飯咯。
可以喎，可以。營多炒飯。
OK，就簡單啲啦，就跟 Elma 呢個主題啦。係啦，
多
贏多嘅調味料包，再加自選一個食材。
係。
你可以揀雞、牛、羊啊又得，係啊，飯又得。
營多入邊嘅調味料嘛，個麵可以走啊嘛，係嘛？
係。有一隻
你可以用埋個麵都得嘅。
係。
我可以用埋個麵，即係最高難度，點將個麵可以變成其他食材？
我已經諗到啦。
好
我已經諗到啦。
2個星期後再同大家見面啦。
係啦，咁咁你洗碗啦，係咯，啲麵。
Elma，我會記住你㗎啦，放心啦。
因
因為我今晚之後我會記住你啊
喂，
，Elma。
人哋講公道説
哎呀，本身我唔係
你咁樣以後冇人夠膽講真説話㗎啦。
師兄啊，邊有人會攞呢個煲嚟整呢個咁嘅蛋包飯先得㗎？係咪先？我哋呢度係玩創意㗎嘛，Elma 個人咧就太老正，係咪先？你太老正啊！
喂，講創意我屌打你啦！
屌打係咩？你求其攞啲肉撈落個漢堡扒就係㗎啦咩？師
做咗一個
兄
漢堡
啊！
扒。
漢堡扒撈肉咪所有肉撈落去，你可以撈羊肉落個漢堡扒度係㗎。
係啊，咁
係啊
係啊。
屌你漢堡扒就係一劈肉嚟㗎啫嘛！
午餐肉喎，你點樣諗到用午餐肉代替免治豬肉啊？呢啲咪就係
午餐肉本身就已經係豬肉，
係啦，唔係等先。午餐肉係由豬肉整成，但係午餐肉本身係一嚿
都係豬肉，
免治豬肉係分開。
都係豬肉。
係我哋唔好理。
你唔好覺得你呢件事好有創意先得㗎，零創意啊！
得，
反正而家贏咗。
我同 Elma 有盡，本身都冇乜友誼㗎，而家進來啦。再見 Elma，我唔想再見到 Elma 呢個人啊！再見 Elma，拜。
欣賞啊！
拜啊拜！
Nathan, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Astral Avalanche! The Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Simulacrum, the dark light fades.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Replica, the dark light fades.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Deep space. Astral Avalanche. Fades. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Replica. How unexpected.
Oh, at least.
challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Astral Avalanche! The dark line fades.
Released.
Good day.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Solar Storm! The dark line fades. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Astral Avalanche! How unexpected.
Oh, released.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
How unexpected.
Oh, released. And to the others are...
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark line fades.
Released. And to the others that I have to challenge me for as well.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Solar Storm! The dark line fades.
Oh, released. And to the others that I have to challenge me for this.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
So unexpected. Nathan, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Astral Evolve! Unexpected.
Or at least, until the others arrive to check.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Deep space. How unexpected.
Or at least, until the others...
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Deep dark light fades.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Astral Evolve! Light fades.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Unexpected.
You must win this one for me, my champion.
Your champion looks delicious. Undeath.
must win this one for me, my champion.
Your champion looks delicious.
Beastie.
You must win this one for me, my champion.
Foolish maiden, come to feed her champion. The bitter rain never ends.
You must win this one for me, my champion.
Foolish maiden, come to feed me her champion. Oh my god. Never ends.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Solar Storm. Dark light fades. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Astral Avalanche. The dark light fades.
the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
How unexpected.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
How unexpected.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Replica dark light fade.
Or at least. Until it.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fade. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Replica, how unexpected.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Replica, light fade. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Simulate the dark light fade. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Astral avalanche. Unexpected.
Or at least.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Replica, the dark light fade. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Astral avalanche light fade. Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
unexpected.
Oh, please.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
Deep space. How unexpected.
Oh, released.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades.
Or at least, until the others.
Maven, the challenge begins. Your champion will fall.
Ready yourself, my champion. I cannot aid you in this battle.
The dark light fades.
It's my lucky day. I already know the winner. One shall murder the other. I was for a chance. Unlike the other. A contest of wills and power. Wow. My only consolation is that
I shall cast you into a pit of infinite torture.
a contest of wills and struggle or strangle.
Godslayer.
Entertain me. Give yourself to the void. Not good. Twin terror. Mortal is unbearable. And yes. Now resist my
I'm better.
Yield and fight on. Life is so brutal. Not good. じゃない二人はもっと変われる嘘を本当にしてしまえたら真実を導ける今はレプリカでいい二人はもっと変われる嘘を本当にしてしまえたら真実を導ける今はレプリカでいい二人はもっと変われる嘘を本当にしてしまえたら真実を導ける想いは形のない儚きものごまかしつのよはしないが素敵最高時
Expedition. Now, Expedition League released in 3.15, which was unfortunately the time when Path of Exile got nerfed harder than pretty much it's ever been. That was the massive skill and Expedition kind of got left to the wayside because, you know, people were too busy doing like MS Paint streams and complaining about the game on Reddit and everything else like that, myself included. But it is one of the most profitable mechanics in the game right now, no matter how that you actually interact with it. You can do just farming in maps where you're just farming for logbook drops with scarabs and all that kind of thing, or you can do the logbooks yourself and interact with the Expedition NPCs. Either way that you do it, you're going to be making some serious bank. When I'm doing logbooks and really focusing, it's easy to make like 3 to 5 exalt an hour without really trying too hard, and that's with pretty mediocre luck. Now, unfortunately for a lot of people, logbooks can be very difficult. They can be really frustrating, and the way that you actually make the currency can seem kind of strange and maybe not so straightforward. So I'm going to try to give you all the information that you need in this video to be able to make as much currency as you possibly can. Now remember, boys, if you're enjoying the content, make sure to give this video a like, and if you're part of the large percentage of people who are still not subscribed to the YouTube channel for some reason, make sure that you do that. And then if you want to stay up to date with all the latest videos, make sure to hit the little notification bell. And without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to have to talk about is how Expedition actually works. The very, very basic level of Expedition is that they're already 4 NPCs. You interact with them in all different ways, but the only way that they'll interact with you is if you've got the right kind of currency. There are various currencies that drop from doing the Expedition mechanic, whether it be logbooks or Expedition map, anything from Mercenary, Raider, Grand, and Exceptional currency. There is one of these for each of the 4 different NPCs. Now we'll talk in specifics about how you interact with these NPCs later in the video, but I do want to let you know that there's a lot to go over in this actual video, so there are going to be timestamps and chapters down below. If you want to know a particular thing, make sure to jump to that section. Now, when it comes to actually running Expedition, the very, very basics of Expedition, you can either do this in maps by using Expedition Scarabs, or by having them, you know, show up randomly in whatever maps that you're running, or you can buy logbooks. Now, logbooks are essentially going to be the higher end version of Expedition, and we will run a logbook later so I can kind of give you an idea. But jumping into this map that I've already opened and prepared, we have an Expedition right here ready to go. Now, of note, I want you to know that if you are running altars as well during these expeditions, these modifiers that say like increased quantity of items found in areas and such, these do affect expeditions as far as I'm aware. So I would suggest that you do go ahead and clear the area, get as many of these quantity of items as you can possibly get, because it's going to increase the amount of logbooks that can drop. So I would suggest doing these before you interact with the expedition. So we'll grab this just for the quantity, so we can get as much out of it as we possibly can. Now, this is a very basic expedition. I haven't ran like a golden scarab or anything like that. This is just a basic rusted expedition scarab to get it to show up. But the very, very basics of this is that there are a few different types of totems and items and remnants and things that you can see here. If you'll take a look, you'll notice this remnant, and it says monsters kill things with 20% or lower life on hit, and then it also says runic monsters have 50% chance to drop an additional rare item. Each of these remnants does have 2 portions. It has a portion that makes the encounter more difficult, as well as a portion that gives you additional items, or say is going to give you additional pack size, or it's going to give you quantity of artifacts that drop. But one thing that you'd have to be careful about is that Expedition, unlike most other mechanics in the game, can get extremely difficult if you choose the very difficult modifiers. And when I say extremely difficult, I mean characters that I have been able to farm Wave 30 Simulacrum with have been one-shot by Expeditions before. Do be aware that some of these modifiers are going to be very dangerous for certain builds. There are modifiers that can just outright make your build not work, like things like monsters are immune to specific kinds of damage, and so on and so forth. Now, the main thing that we are going to be looking for when we are looking at these different remnants is we're going to be looking for quantity of items dropped by monsters and quantity of logbooks dropped by monsters. Those are the 2 main ones that you care about. You'll notice there's lots of things that says like quantity of artifacts. You'll see things like extra jewelry or currency or runic monsters have a chance to drop an additional talisman. All of these are worthless. The only thing that you're really looking for is you're looking for logbook quantity and item quantity dropped by monsters. Those are the 2 main things that we're looking for in normal maps. Now, the idea here is that you are making a chain of explosions. You can use the V key or whatever your current bind is for League mechanics, and you'll get this circle that is available. Now, you'll notice that a lot of these things that are on the ground are turning green. Let's talk about what some of these things are. So we've already talked about the remnants, and when you explode one of these remnants, everything that comes in that circle, as well as everything that comes afterwards, is going to have that modifier. So if we start out by popping this one, and then we move over into these, all of these monsters that pop in the second explosion are still going to have the modifiers of the first one, as well as the modifiers of the second one. You can also use Shift plus the V key here to unplace the little exploders if you want to. Now let's talk about these different things that show up here. You'll notice that there's these little icons that have like a chest on them. When we get into the logbook, I'll go more in depth about what these are, but it does kind of show you a little bit of this. This is going to be a chest that you can open that will have various items inside of it. The skulls, however, are going to be the actual runic monsters. Now you might notice some of these modifiers say runic monsters have 50% chance to drop an additional rare jewelry. The main thing that is going to cause you to get logbooks to drop is going to be getting those remnants that have the particular modifiers, meaning more items dropped, more logbooks dropped, and then popping all of these large skulls. The small skulls are important as well, but the large skulls are the main ones that you want to be focusing on here. Now this is a little bit different in logbooks, but we're not talking about logbooks yet. So the idea here is that you would want to go around, find all of the remnants that seem like they would make sense to grab, like quantity of artifacts is okay, the jewelry and all of that doesn't really matter, pack size is very good, chance to drop an additional influence item. I mean, this stuff is cool, but it's nothing really super special, so we don't care too much about that. Quantity of artifacts is once again okay, and then you'll see like chance to drop additional currency items. All of these are unfortunately pretty bad, and we don't care about them much at all. We do care about the pack size, so we're going to go here first. What is important about putting down these actual little totems is that you do want to go with the most important remnants first, because that's going to affect the drops as well as the difficulty of everything that you choose afterwards. So for example here, the only thing I really care about is pack size. So we're going to try to get as many things as we can in here. Like we're going to get that skull that's up at the top right. We're going to get both of these remnants. We have to be careful about not getting too many mods that are going to make us, die. And we are going to get as many of these as we possibly can. We've got quantity of artifacts. Chance to drop an additional unique isn't that useful, and there's not that many skulls up here, so we don't really care about that. We don't do cold damage, so this is fine. You'll notice that there are bigger skulls over on the right, so we're going to try to get as many as we can. And then we're moving down here. Additional currency is okay. It's nothing super crazy, but quantity of artifacts is also all right. We're going to grab that and all of the skulls. There is a big skull here, but we're going to see if we can get over as far as we can this way. Doesn't look like we can, so we'll get this big skull that's in the middle here that we haven't gotten yet. Get us as much distance as we can. We've got one left, so we're just going to try to get as much at the final one as possible. So we've hit most of the skulls here. In normal expeditions, you should be able to hit just about everything if you do have the nodes for expedition on the tree. We'll talk about that in a moment. But once you've got all the places down, you can check down here in the bottom right to make sure that you don't have any modifiers you can't do. So for this build, the only things that really stop us from working are going to be monsters cannot be crit and immune to fizz damage. Everything else we can mostly deal with. So we're going to go ahead and hit the detonate explosives, and you'll notice that the explosives will go in the order that we place them down, and you'll get a bunch of these monsters that are spawning. Now these monsters can be very, very, very dangerous. I do not want to understate how dangerous some of these runic monsters can get. These are some of the most dangerous monsters in the game without a doubt. Now you'll see, we did get a logbook. We'll talk about that here in a moment after I finish killing all of these monsters. But that is the main drop that we're looking for, is logbooks. You really just want to focus on pack size, quantity of items, and quantity of logbooks dropped. The expedition markers and expedition currency and all of that is secondary here. You really don't get that much expedition currency from these ones in maps, but we'll go ahead, we'll open up the chest. You'll see we'll get some of the reroll currency as well as some various items. Now the main thing that I said before that we're looking for are these expedition logbooks, and there are a variety of different kinds of expedition logbooks. But once you've killed all the things, picked up all the items, that is pretty much it for the expedition itself. There isn't very much to it beyond that. So let's go back to town. So that is the main way that you're going to be farming expeditions in maps. Now, when it comes to the actual Atlas tree, the nodes that I would say that are important are you're going to want to get Ancient Writings as well as Distinguished Demolitionist. Ancient Writings is going to make it so that they have a chance to have an additional suffix modifier. Suffix modifiers are the good modifiers that add additional things to the actual remnants. That's like the pack size and the quantity and all of that. And then expeditions and areas have +2 remnants. These small nodes are also pretty decent, but they're not as important. And then we're also going to get Distinguished Demolitionist. This makes it so that we have more explosives, as well as the explosives are larger whenever we're in a map. The last node that we're going to get is Buried Knowledge. 50% increased quantity of expedition logbooks dropped by monsters in areas and contains 20% increased number of runic monster markers. I would say that if you are going to do expeditions and maps, you definitely have those nodes before you try to go for them. So that is the basic way that you are actually going to generate logbooks and do expeditions in various maps. You can make this just a part of your normal Atlas strategy. It doesn't have to be something that you're specifically focusing on. You just do this as something extra on top of everything else. You can combo it with like Harbingers as well as just normal things that add extra monsters into maps. Now, when it comes to these logbooks are the most interesting part of Expedition as a whole. These logbooks are the main way that you're going to be generating rogue currency, as well as the main way that you'll be gathering the reroll currency. The reroll currency is going to be these items here, the Astragallis, exotic coinage, scrap metals, and burial medallions, which I don't happen to have any of at the moment. These up here are the basic currencies, and the vast majority of the basic currency that you're going to get is from logbooks. Those normal maps that have expeditions in them drop almost no currency. Logbooks are dropping 10 to 15 times as much easily. So that's why I say that in normal maps you really shouldn't be caring too much about getting the expedition currency type stuff. All of this is going to be absolutely dwarfed by how much you get in logbooks. Now, the logbooks themselves are not all equal. This is going to be mainly for how things are currently, but it should be mostly the same in the future depending on how far back you're going to watch this video. There are 4 different kinds of logbooks. There are going to be logbooks for each one of the different rogues. There is Rog, there is Gwenin, there is Tujen, and there is Danig. I would say that Rog's logbooks are by far the least desirable at the moment. They sell for the least, they do the least for you because Rog is the hardest to interact with, and he's only really useful for making currency very, very early in the league. He's very powerful for making currency early in the league because you can craft some pretty crazy items. Like, for example, I think I have a pair of boots somewhere in here that I crafted with Rog. Let me see if I can find them. Yeah, so I crafted these boots with Rog, just randomly buying a pair of boots and crafting some stuff on them. We've got 30% movement speed. This is tier 1 percentage evasion. It's tier 1 cold, tier 1 chaos, and then I crafted some life on them. A pair of boots like this very early on in the league will sell for a lot of money, and they were very easy to make with Rog. But you need to have some crafting knowledge, you need to have an idea of what's really being sought after at any given time. Rog, we're not going to talk about a ton here just because he's pretty in-depth. More so than a guide like this would be able to cover. Next on the list, I would say that Gwenin is probably the 3rd most useful when it comes to her logbooks. Typically, towards the end of a league, Gwenin logbooks will be more worthwhile because her currency, specifically the Astragallis, will be worth more later in the league, which is about right now because people are trying to gamble for like Headhunters and Mage Bloods and Squires and things like that. Early on in the league, you can get some different bases that may be important for crafting, or some particular uniques that might be really sought after early on, like if Fizz builds are really powerful, like Fizz traps and things like that, and the daggers, Cold Iron Points are worth something, you can get those pretty easily with her. But beyond that, she's not too super useful. And then we've got Tujen, the first of the 2 ones that we're going to be focusing on today. Tujen's logbooks are worth a decent amount. They're going to be about even to Gwenin right now, but typically earlier in the league, his will be worth a bit more because he is going to be the main way that we generate just raw currency. I would say that it is very easy to get multiple exalts per time that you interact with Tujen. On average, for 50 reroll tokens, I can get 3 to 4 exalts of just total items from him pretty easily. That is the vast majority of the currency that I've been generating recently. I've even spent a whole ton of it, but it's mainly going to be through stacked decks, either exalt or exalt shards, and just raw currency. We'll show a little bit of that in a moment. And then last, and definitely not least, is Danig. Danig is a little bit weird because he's not as straightforward as the other rogues. You mainly are using him just to generate the other currencies. Danig logbooks are worth the most simply because they do provide his currency, they do provide the chance at burial medallions, which allows you to buy additional logbooks among many other things. Now, one thing you do want to keep in mind when you're talking about logbooks in general is that you want to double check the price of a logbook in comparison to a split beast. There are beasts in Bestiary that have the ability to split items. Danig logbooks at the moment and logbooks that guarantee a boss from the implicits that you'll see on here are typically the ones that are worth splitting. So for example, if a Danig logbook is currently like 70 chaos, but a split beast is 50, that means that you could save 20 chaos on buying another Danig logbook by splitting it instead. So let's talk about actually running this logbook. So we're going to take this logbook, and one thing that is important that you may not realize is you do want to roll the implicits of this logbook with Blessed Orbs. There's a reason why Blessed Orbs are so expensive right now. They're like a chaos each, which is more so than they've pretty much ever been, and that is because we're going to reroll implicits of logbooks. Now, as I said previously, Gwenin is going to be more important than Rog, so we are going to be running the Gwenin portion of this logbook. Now, not all of the different zones are equal. You can go on Google and look up like cheat sheets for the different logbook areas to get the current like layout of what people think are best, but the main thing that I would say is not picking a bad layout and also choosing the ones that have the best modifiers on them. So for example, you'll see a variety of things on here. The main ones that I personally look for are going to be ones that impact the amount of runic monster markers, ones that give additional suffixes, as well as ones that affect explosives. Quantity of artifacts can be good as well, but typically it is easier to just get more if you have more explosives or if there's more monsters and such to kill. Now do be aware that there are going to be modifiers like area contains an additional underground area, or area contains the boss, right? Bosses can spawn in here occasionally, and I will talk a little bit about the boss once we get in here. However, I can't be guaranteed that it's going to spawn. They are relatively rare. I only see them like 1 out of every 15 or 20 logbooks most of the time. But the main way that I run logbooks is, since these are pretty expensive, I do like to roll them relatively well. I am mainly looking for anything that is above 70% quantity. Now you do have to be careful here because logbooks can be extremely dangerous. Like for example on this one, this is extra damage and Fizz Reflect. My build cannot do Fizz Reflect. But we got 8331. This is more monster life. Players cannot regen max resistances. This build can't do max regen, so we need to keep rolling. And you do want to spend a little bit of money here. Now, poison on hit's a little annoying for this build, but the rest of this we can deal with, so we'll go ahead and run this as is. So you do want to be careful. When you go to Danig, you'll open up the expedition map. You want to make sure that you're choosing the right one. We're going to be choosing Druids of the Broken Circle for Gwenin. You'll open this up at your main map device, and we will enter the logbook. Now, this might be a little bit intimidating at first when you look at it, but I got lucky and a boss spawned here, so I can actually show you what you will do for a boss. But there is a different strategy that you're going to be taking when you do get a boss to spawn. Now, you do have to explode the little, like, hut circle thing here with one of your expedition explosives to actually get the boss to spawn, but you're going to want to do this at the very end. Now the main thing that changes is that these expedition bosses are the main source of the reroll currency that you're going to be getting out of these expeditions. I've had times where these bosses can drop upwards of 40 or 50 reroll currency just by itself. Depending on which reroll currency is, that can be multiple exalts. Now, the way that you get more currency from these bosses is you have to hit as many remnants as you possibly can, and you are looking for the modifiers on these remnants that say monsters drop additional quantity of items. It's not chests drop additional quantity, it's not additional quantity of relics, it is specifically the one that says increased quantity of items dropped by monsters. Now, unfortunately, this mod is a little bit rare, so it doesn't show up whenever I want it to, so I am seeing that's quantity of artifacts found in chests, and of course it seems like we're probably not going to find one because they never show up when I actually want to do a boss. So we'll check these down here, and it doesn't look like we got any quantity of items. So the way that you typically want to lay out your expeditions is you're going to want to take a look and see where most of the runic markers are. You kind of have to figure out a path in your head, and you want to see where the most important modifiers are in any given place. Now, I personally, like I said before, the things that we're looking for are going to be things like pack size, quantity of items dropped by monsters, and then anything that has to do with artifacts. So if you look around here, you're going to notice that there are these special remnants a lot of the times that say like chance to drop an enchanted item or things like that. These are almost all completely useless. These are the ones that I skip the most. Very few of them ever really do anything good. Enchanted item is easily one of the worst possible. But there is one special modifier that says like doubles the amount of runic monsters and things like that. Those are very powerful, so look out for them, but they are rare. And then also we do have these underground areas. These underground areas will have like 3 to 4 chests in them. If you can get them, go for them, but they're not the main reason that we're here. So quantity of artifacts is typically pretty good, but this is off way in the corner by itself, so it's going to be pretty hard to get to. Quantity of artifacts once again, but we're kind of just going to go for an efficient remnant route is what it looks like. Now, as we're moving through here, once again, if a boss does spawn, your strategy is different. So everything I've been talking to up to this point has been just how to do bosses. If your logbook does not spawn a boss, you are mainly going to be looking for remnants that give you powerful effects like additional quantity of items, additional quantity of artifacts, and then simply getting as many of the large skull markers as you can. With bosses, it's different because you want to get as many remnants as you possibly can, but normally you would just be going for remnants that do something impressive, any good chests that you can manage, and then the big skulls. So here, I'm probably going to say we're going to do a bit of a weird pattern where I'm going to be showing on the minimap. We're going to probably go this way, cut through here, maybe come up to the top, and then come loop around down here. Now, these currency chests can drop some pretty solid items, but you just want to see anything that shows up green is something that's typically worth exploding. And these little chests that have the Kalgurian, like, artifact marker on it like this are ones that drop the artifacts. So we're just going to quickly go through here, try to get as many of these as we can. Keep note of the modifiers in case it's something that you can't handle. Get as many of the chests and the Kalgurian stuff as you can while you move by, while still getting all of the remnants that we possibly can. Now, unfortunately, in logbooks, you don't inherit any of your Atlas stuff, so your explosions are going to be small and tiny unless you got some interesting stuff from the prefixes. So we unfortunately don't have a lot of range to put these down, so you're going to have to deal with that unless you got some decent implicits. So we'll go over here, grab those two big skulls, try to get as many remnants as we possibly can. We can just barely get all of that. Monsters are immune to chaos damage is okay for us. We can't reach, so we'll grab these. Monsters hits are always critical strike is okay for this build. Down here we have quantity of items found in chests, which is pretty decent, so we'll go ahead and grab it. Now over here, let's see what we've got. That's not too great, and that's not too great, so we'll probably just try to stretch up this way. Get as many of the little skull markers as we can. Hits against monsters cannot be critical strikes is something that bricks this build, so we will avoid it. We'll grab this remnant here. Monsters don't grant flash charges is pretty difficult, but we have flasks that give us charges when we're hit, so that's not too big of a deal. Monsters are immune to curses, also annoying specifically for the boss, but it is what it is. We need as many remnants as we can get. Now this is kind of where we need to make a decision. We can probably just make it around here is about the best that we're going to be able to do. I'm going to try to go for skulls here. We'll grab that as well as the skull. Quantity of artifacts found in chests. We can probably get all of that there. Immune to lightning damage is okay. Damage from monsters can shock. We are immune to those. And then we're just going to try to stretch down towards the boss. And then we'll hit the boss here. As many skulls as we can get. And alright, we're done. Now, I would make sure that you double check to see that you've not gotten any mods that make your build unable to do it. Hits are always crits, it's kind of whatever. The boss is going to be very dangerous, but it should be alright. No flash charges, should be okay. A bunch of damage, and we'll see how it goes. Now, logbooks are extremely dangerous. It doesn't really matter how good your character is. If you choose too many crazy mods, you're still going to die, so do be aware of that. So we'll move through here, and as we get further and further in, those mods are going to start stacking up, and these monsters are going to be extremely dangerous, especially the bosses. The bosses inherit all of the modifiers that you see there, but do keep in mind that bosses are not runic monsters, so they're not going to get the modifiers that say, like, runic monsters gain 25% of health every 4 seconds or something like that. They're not going to gain those modifiers. We're just going to kill everything that we can here. We'll go into the underground zone, and then we will fight the boss. Now, this boss is, fortunately, one of the easier ones. This is a Gwynin logbook, but it can be a little bit rough depending on the build that you're playing. This particular build doesn't have too big of a deal with it as long as we're able to deal damage to him, so it shouldn't be that bad because we can move pretty quickly. There are a couple of the bosses that are pretty rough, but this one is, thankfully, relatively straightforward. Now, this underground zone will spawn here in a moment. I think it's right here. Now, when you go into the underground zones, they're going to have a variety of different things that can happen. Like this one is you just have to kill a bunch of spiders until you can get the chest. But as you can see, all these underground zones do is just kind of give you a bunch of chests, which is good. And if you can get them, you definitely should, because it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chests instead of, you know, just like the single one that you would get. But it's not something that you should be really focusing on if there are other better things to be going for inside of the logbook. So we will go ahead and grab that, and then we'll move back up here. Now, the boss is going to be spawning here in a moment, so I'm going to need to change over to Lancing Steel. My curse isn't going to work anyways. But this boss in particular is one that has a couple of different things about him. I'm going to die to a bleed. Yeah, unfortunately, I got a huge bleed on me and I didn't have my life last, so there's a death. As I said, expect to die relatively frequently in these, especially if your build can't handle certain things, and if you're running the mods as absolutely difficult as you possibly can, but that was 100% increased bleed duration, and I didn't have a life flask up. So this boss is relatively straightforward, thankfully. He does just have a couple of big attacks like that, but as long as you are moving relatively frequently, he's not too bad. He does have a leap. He hits very hard. If he does hit you, you are probably going to die without a ton of defensive layers. But he is easily one of the more straightforward bosses. He does have these little mobs here that heal him if you leave them up, but if you do enough damage, it doesn't really matter. Now, as you can see, we got like 1,000 currency there, as well as 27 of the Astragallis. That was with essentially no quantity modifiers. If we would have gotten like a 40% quantity box or two, that would have been easily like 40 or 50 of those Astragallis. Now, you just go around, pick up all the items that you want to, that you're interested in, and get as much of the currency as you can. Now, when it comes to particularly Gwenin logbooks, I would say that for the average person, especially if you're watching this video, you probably don't want to be gambling with Gwenin, but I will show you how to do it. Just keep in mind, I have warned you that you're most likely not going to make money on it, but you walk around, you pick up all the items, and then we'll go talk to the rogues. So now we get to the fun part, sitting in our hideout and interacting with these wonderful characters here and generating tons of currency from them. We're going to start in order of worst to best. Now, Rog is going to be the first one that we'll talk to. The main thing that you're going to be doing with Rog is you're going to be trying to craft items that you think people would find useful or that you would find useful in general. He is typically better very early in the league when you can craft things like shields or boots or gloves or rings or jewels. Those tend to be the things that are pretty good. So we're just going to look through and see what we can find here, if we get any halfway decent bases. One thing that Rog is very good at crafting is going to be suppression gear, and it looks like this is something that we could start off of. It's got some good stats on it that we can work with, so let's show you how Rog actually works. So what Rog is going to do is he's going to be like, hey, I can change some things about this item. Do you want to try changing it? So for example, accuracy, dexterity, and lightning resist are all really good, so we don't want to reroll this, right? Like, we want to do something else. However, upgrading the level of 2 modifiers by 1 tier, he could update the lightning resist or the dexterity, which would be pretty solid, so we'll go ahead and let him do that. Looks like he upgraded not those things. He upgraded the lightning damage as well as the physical damage. Now, I'm going to say, in general, we are really going to want some open prefixes here. This is why you kind of need a little bit of crafting knowledge. The percentage evasion is good, but I do think that this is probably worth doing to open up some of these prefixes. Added physical damage to attacks and evasion is good, but it doesn't have room for life, and it doesn't have anything that makes it like an amazing set of gloves yet. So we're going to go ahead and remove those. We'll add on a prefix here. It is absolutely miserable. Upgrade the level of 2 modifiers by 1 tier. This will hit one of the lower tier modifiers. We're rerolling the prefixes again, which is good. Rerolling the prefixes again, which is good. We got a life mod, which is pretty decent. So now it's got life, accuracy, dexterity, and a resist. We're going to add one more prefix. A low tier evasion. Reroll the modifiers of a single modifier. You don't always have to take these because you'll notice it says upgrade and take. It doesn't look like very many of these are worth rerolling. Now, we will just go ahead and take this item. So, as you can see, we got a decent pair of gloves, but they're nothing really super amazing. However, very early on in the league, these would be worth a decent amount of money. Tier 1 accuracy, a bunch of dexterity, a resist, evasion, and maximum life. That's a pretty good set of gloves for something very, very simple from Rog early on in the league. Now, you can do this with pretty much any kind of gear that you want. If you find a piece of gear that has some good modifiers already on it when you look at it, see if you can modify them a little bit. Crafting bows right now is pretty good with Rog. Crafting claws is pretty good with him. That is the basis of how Rog works. But he's very complicated, and it's not always going to give you good items, and you kind of got to know what you're doing. Now, when it comes to our lady Gwenin, the cowgirl. Now, Gwenin is an interesting one, to say the least. I've been doing a lot of Gwenin gambling, but that's because I just am doing it for content over my stream at twitch.tv/BigDucks, which you should go follow, by the way. I would say, for the vast majority of people, you should not interact with Gwenin. You should simply sell her Astragallis. Right now, they are worth a pretty decent amount because people are trying to gamble for like headhunters and stuff like that. I would not suggest that you interact with her at all. However, if you want to, there's a particular website that you should go to. Now, I will link this website, but the thing that you can do is you can just go to Google and search up Gwennen Regex. That is all that you're trying to find. The idea here is that this will give you a string that you can paste into her actual like little item thing there that'll give you only these items will show up in there. So for me, I don't care about the Crimson Jewel. But beyond that, I don't really care about Badge of the Brotherhood. So we're going to remove those two things because jewels tend to be pretty expensive, so this one's the only one that's really worth it. The rest of them can stay. You're going to hit generate string, and you're going to notice it gives you this like weird combination of letters and stuff here. If we go back into the game, you can paste this into this little slot here, and it will only highlight items that are those particular items that you're looking for. So if we hit a couple of these Gwennen rerolls, you'll notice that it's only highlighting the things that we were looking for. Now the idea behind Gwennen is as you buy these items, you have a chance for them to be unique, among other things. However, this chance is extremely low. The chances of you getting literally anything good, I've spent probably 20 Exalt or something on Gwen at this point, and I've literally not gotten one good item yet. So, I mean, yeah, of course, it's of course going to troll me. I got the Oppressor, but anyways, that's the idea. Is that Gwennen in general is just going to be gambling for potentially good items. However, most of the time, they're very not good. Now, the idea behind Tujen is we are going to be haggling for items. So the idea is that we will click one of these items here, and we've got this little haggling bar, and we can choose between offering him one of the artifact or offering him what he's asking for. If you just give him what he asks for, he'll take it every single time. But, as he said himself, it's boring if you take the first one. So the idea here is we're trying to haggle with him. Now, you can move this little bar with the mouse wheel, however, my mouse wheel is kind of messed up, so I typically...
Getting to 40, or even 36 challenges, in a given Pewee League is no easy task. In fact, it's something that relatively few players will ever complete through a combination of difficulty, time required, expense, and the fact that it often just doesn't give all that much. But if your goal has ever been 36,
I counted them at 40 exalts, which is definitely on the minimum. So 11,000 exalts on average is a minimum to recraft this item from scratch, which is just mind-blowing that I was even able to craft this. But of course, there's luck involved, and this one was actually a bit of a wild ride because we've had some really low lows and some really high highs when it comes to crafting this item. So let me give you guys a bit of a rundown of the story time, if you will, of this item. So it all started with actually a pretty impulsive decision. I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to craft a 12-link weapon. So I started doing the craft. We're going to look into the step-by-step guide a little bit later on. And I got to the point where I'm influenced for my third prefix, and I hit T2 elemental damage attack skills. Now, I hit it on the third try, which has an average of about 9.5, so I was like, you know what, there's not really, it doesn't make any sense to try again for like 1% damage. I'm just going to go ahead and keep it. So I kept the T2 elemental damage with attack skills, then we started working on suffixes, and we got to the point where we had 3 suffixes, which were not what we needed, which means we had to do a reforge keeping prefixes. So we head over to TFT and we do a reforge keep prefix, and unfortunately, the person who actually did the craft did a reforge keep suffix, which completely wipes the clock, basically means that you have to go back from scratch. Now, given the fact that these sort of items are extremely expensive to make, the guy who made that mistake basically put my buddy taking care of the crafting of the claw on ignore, and then he deleted his post of selling the craft on TFT, and he basically just disappeared from the face of the earth. Yes, we've put in a report or whatever on TFT, but it just doesn't matter, because even if we got to talk to him or whatever, at the end of the day, we all know that he can't afford to make the prefixes because those alone are anywhere between 400 to 1,000 exalts. So we kind of just let it go, and I was like, you know what?
I think I'm done with the 12 link project. Someone bricked my prefixes, whatever. But I still had a little bit of currency left over. I had about 2 mirrors and some amount of exalts coming in from the copies from our physical bow. So I was like, maybe we'll try again if I can find a base. Because I did not want to do redo prefixes. I was like, nope, I don't want to do it. It's too annoying. And again, once we go into the step-by-step, you'll see just how annoying it is. But one of them actually popped up. A claw with triple T1 prefixes, T1 Ruthless, 40% more attack, and T1 Wed for 1 mirror. Now, I messaged the guy, and it was in a tab called WIP, which stands for Work in Progress. So I figured, he's not actually selling it. He's just putting it up for a mirror, but he's not actually going to sell it. So I kept going on about my day, and then like 30 minutes later, he messages me back. He's like, oh, I was AFK. Do you still want this? And I was like, what? This is crazy. He's actually going to sell it. So 1 mirror was definitely a good deal for the prefixes at that point, because there were triple T1. As I said, the average cost of getting triple T1 would be around 900 exalts, so a mirror was basically half of that. So I was like, that's a good deal. So I bought it. And again, we started working on the suffixes, reforge speed, and so on and so on. And I was utilizing, a lot of people for my chat, and a lot of, TFT for reforging, and reforge key prefix, and blah, blah, blah. And we just kind of did that for a few hours, and then eventually we got to the point where someone actually hit reforge speed without crafting prefixes cannot be changed. Now that person happens to be a friend of mine, no noob. It's just, mistakes happen, accidents happen. Again, someone who I know for a fact will not be able to repay this, and I'm not gonna force them to play to try to repay it. So we just called it, called it a failure. We said, okay, well, this is the second time someone has bricked the claw. The prefix is once again completely dead. I've got no more bases. I think I'm over this. But then the initial claw, which was bricked, right? The guy who actually got someone to do the reforge and who bricked it, he still had the base, which had no prefixes on it, but I still had imprints left over. And again, we'll talk about the step-by-step guide on why imprints are important. But we still had an imprint of the prefixes. And before I had bought the second base with the triple T1 for 1 mirror, right? Because yes, that mistake cost us 1 mirror plus everything we had invested in the suffixes, which was around 1,000 exalts total. When that second brick happened, we literally lost 1,000x, or just about. So Photox had prepared, Photox being the co-crafter for this claw and for this bow and the crafter of this wand, he actually had 10 bases with Ruthless ready to go to Wokorb. So he came over to me and he gave them to me, and I was like, dude, I don't want to do this again. Like, there's no way. We're running out of money. We've spent thousands of exalts. It's been bricked twice. It's not gonna happen. So I was like, yeah, not gonna happen. But then I was kind of sitting here and I was looking at the 1 mirror in my stash, and I was like, you know what? A couple 100x 1 mirror. It's like, okay, I'll give it one more shot. So I used his Awakener Orb bases. He had 10 of them, and I used, I think, 3. I got to the point where I was able to AUG, missed the AUG, didn't successfully annul, started imprint, Wokorbing again. Basically got to the point where I was on the last base with Ruthless on the Awakener's Orb. So I hit the Awakener's Orb, and I had an open prefix. I'm like, okay, it's time to go for it. We augment Influence. He doesn't hit it. He hits some random garbage, but it doesn't have an attack tag, which means I'm able to target Annul, so I do that. Augment Influence again, and brick. Unfortunately, this time it does have an attack mod, so I can't target Annul it, so I have to YOLO Annul. So I YOLO Annul, and I actually beastcrafted minus prefix plus suffix, and I actually hit it. So at that point, I've once again got an open prefix, so I'm ready to augment once more. So I augment, and there it is. After 4 tries, T1 elemental damage with attack skills is back on the claw, and this is a 1 in 19. So it took me 4 for a 1 in 19. So at this point, I'm like, okay, there's a chance that this is doable here. So once again, we start doing the suffixes: reforge speed, reforge speed, reforge speed. 13 multi strike, and we eventually hit it. And then we do, the rest of the stuff, and we augment the last. We got to the point where we get to augment the last suffix. We fail, which means we have to redo suffixes once again, and we do all the suffixes. We get to the point where we can aug Influence, and we fail again. and we get to the point where we can augment influence again, and we fail again. Now at this point, we've once again lost about 600-700 exalts, something like that, in a few hours in the morning. And Photox is like, you know what? I'm just gonna head to the gym. We'll work on this later. He gives me back the claw. At that point, it's got no suffixes on it, nothing like that. I had been farming some reforged speed earlier in the day, before Photox got his hands on the claw. So I had one reforged speed on my bench. Just one. So I reforged speed and I actually hit T1 multi-sharp, which means we're ready to go forward with the craft. Now, again, I'll talk about this step by step a little bit later on. So I start doing what we have to do, which is spamming exalts, annulling, spamming exalts, annulling, blah blah blah. I get to the point where I annul the cannot roll attack mods, which is a 1 exalt craft to be able to target annul, which is a 50-50. I annulled it 7 times in a row. And I'm just mad. I'm like, dude, this game sucks. Like, I'm so over this. But I finally annul it after 7 attempts, right? 50-50s that I failed 7 times in a row. And I'm like, well, whatever. We go again. So I slam 1 more exalt and I hit T1 critical strike chance. So we are once again ready to go for the augments. Now I look on TFT and I can't find an augment influence. They're very rare, obviously, because the league is a little bit older, so they're super rare. Can't find one. I end up finding one from, I end up finding a non-influence to influence instead, and it's from this guy who's got 0 vouches. He's a white name. Matter of fact, I asked him for his IGN, and it takes 3 attempts for him to tell me what his in-game name is, because he's that much of a noob, like a completely new player. I don't know how the hell he got his hands on a non-influence to influence. But I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I literally told him, if you steal this item, you're making me a favor. Like, I literally told him, like, I don't care about this anymore. And we're running out of money, right? So I'm like, you know what? Fine. So I head over to this guy, head over to his hideout, I give him the item, and I'm like, alright, dude, I tell him, I'm giving you 40x, which is the price for the non-inf, but I tell him, if you hit any tier of the last modifier that I want, which is increased crit damage, I'm gonna give you an extra 100x. And then he goes, oh, well, I hope I hit something. And then he traced me back, and he actually hit T1 increased critical damage, which is a 1 in 28 chance. So at this point, I'm ecstatic. The item is done. It's finished. It's over. The pain is over. So that's a bit of the story time on how this claw came to be. Honestly, by far the craziest craft I've ever decided to attempt. Super happy with the results too. You know, fully T1 is just absolutely beautiful to look at. Now, let's talk about the step-by-step guide on how to make this such an item, because it is very, very annoying. And it all starts with getting an Imperial Claw with Shaper and a Shaper influence at item level either 75 or 76. Now, you might be wondering why 75 or 76, and that is because all of the affixes on this item, except for 1, are basically, well, except for 2 actually, are all item level 75 or below. So basically, multi-strike, crit chance, crit multi are all 75. Elemental damage with attack skills 75. The socketed skills is 83, and the ruthless is 83. So why do we want 75? It's because we get to remove a lot of the weighting for when we start working on the suffixes, as well as the prefixes. So it just makes it easier if it's 75 or 76. But now, as you just heard me say, when we have an item, which is item level 75 with item level 83 mods on it, it's impossible to do. But there is one way that we can actually do that, and that's with beasts. So, the way that you start this craft is that you'll take a claw, which is either item level 75 or 76, Imperial Claw, of course, that's base, and it's got to be Shaper. And you are going to, hit it with a Alchemy, in order to make it rare, and then you're going to annul every single mod on it. You want it to basically be rare, but with no mods, nothing on it, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to benchcraft the suffix, anything can do, fire res, lightning res, attack speed, it doesn't matter, any suffix, and then you're going to use this beast called a Ferric Wolf Alpha. So what a Ferric Wolf Alpha does is it adds a prefix and it removes a suffix. But the thing that's interesting about these wolves, or these beasts, is that the item level of the modifier which is added to your item is based on the item level of the beast, not the item level of the item. What that means is that even if we have a level 75 or 76 item, when we use a level 83 Ferric Wolf Alpha, it is possible to get 40% more attack damage, right? This modifier here, this is Socketed Scales deal 40% more attack damage. This is an item level 83 modifier. So, on average, it will take you 121, I believe, Ferric Wolf Alphas in order to get the 40% more attack damage. Now, once you actually get it, right? Once you actually get the Socketed more attack damage on a blue base, on a rare base by itself, right? The only modifier is going to be that because the wolf is going to remove that suffix that you bench crafted. So you're going to have just the Socketed more. You're gonna craft on prefixes cannot be changed, which is a suffix, and then you're going to scour. Now, what happens when you scour an item with prefixes cannot be changed is it's going to remove all the suffixes. But the thing is, if your item only has a single prefix, which in our case only has Socketed 40% more attack damage, when you actually scour it, it is going to go back to a magic item. Because rare items need to have at least 2 prefixes or 2 suffixes in order to actually be considered rare. So it goes back to a blue. Now the advantage is when it goes back to a blue is that you can imprint it using the Chrysic Kimral, this beast over here. This is going to create a save state of your item so that no matter what you do, as long as you don't vendor it or valor, you can basically bring it back to where it is. Now, once you have this Socketed 40% more attack damage on a blue base, and you've made imprints of it, it's time to Awakener's Orb. Now, an Awakener's Orb is going to allow you to basically mash 2 items together of 2 different influences in order to make it, mixed, Shaper and Elder. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that the item that you're using to mash into this has level 20 Ruthless. And the thing about the level 20 Ruthless is that it needs the item that has it, which has to be a claw, by the way. The claw with the level 20 Ruthless needs to have no other influence modifier on it. Because when you Awakener's Orb, the way that the game works is that it's going to pick 1 influence modifier from each item at random. Because the claw only has, the Shaper Claw only has Socketed Skills deal 40% more attack damage. When you Awakener's Orb it with the claw, which is Elder, for the Ruthless, it is guaranteed to pick both. However, if you had another Elder modifier on the claw, it could actually Awakener's Orb wrong and give you something you don't want. So you want to make sure that Ruthless is by itself in terms of influence modifier. Now there's 2 ways to go about getting Ruthless on the Elder Claw. The first one is to Jagged Spam. I believe it's a 1 in 90. And the other one is to just spam some alterations. I believe it's a 1 in 1,000 or something like that. Now, once you've got those bases ready, and I would highly recommend you prepare like at least 10 or 20 of them if you were to attempt this craft, is you are going to Awakener's Orb the Elder Claw onto the Shaper Claw, which is going to give you a Shaper Elder Claw with both the Socketed Skill 40% more attack damage and the Ruthless. But after that, you need to make sure that when you Awakener's Orb, there's an empty prefix. If there is no empty prefix, you're going to have to annul for it or beastcraft with a Ferric Links also, which is minus prefix plus suffix. And if you ever remove either the Socketed 40% attack damage or the Ruthless, you basically have to imprint it back, which is that save state, and then you have to Awakener Orb again, right? Now, eventually, you'll get to the point where you have the Ruthless, the Socketed, and then an open prefix. Now, you also need to have full suffixes, right? Because the next step is very expensive. It's an augment influence, and if you have an open suffix, there's a chance that it augments the suffix. So, in most cases, you'll have at least 1 or 2 suffixes already from the Awakener's Orb. If you have only 1 suffix, you will want to benchcraft one of these aspects, right? So by crafting one of these aspects, you're going to add a free suffix onto the actual item, and then for the last suffix, you can just use anything on your bench, right? Fire res, cold res, whatever, any other suffix. If you have 2 suffixes, you don't have to do the beast craft. You can just craft on some random stuff from the bench, as long as you have full suffixes. Now at that point, you should have Ruthless, 40% more, an open prefix, and 3 suffixes. It's time to augment influence. Now when you augment influence, there's a 1 in 19 that you will get this level 20 elemental damage with attack skills. However, it's divided by 2 when it comes to T2 elemental damage with attack skills, which makes it a 1 in 9.5, right? Which is not that bad, but it does depend on the price of augment influence. Earlier on in the league, when they're 10 or 20x, we're only looking at about 100x to get this going. But of course, later on, when they're 40x, especially if you're going for tier 1, it's 19 times 40. We're looking at like 800 exalts just for this 1 modifier without anything else. But if you're lucky, or if you do it enough times, you are going to get to the point where you have these prefixes: Ruthless, 40% more, and Wed. At that point, it's time to start working on the suffixes. So the way that you work on the suffixes is that by far the most important is the attack speed, which is why we are going to make sure that we only accept T1 multi-strike. So the way that we do that is we're going to craft on prefixes cannot be changed, and we're going to reforge speed, right, with harvest. So reforge speed more common, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, one of them is going to block all of them, and you're guaranteed at least one, so it just doesn't matter. But yeah, we're going to reforge speed, and it's a 1 in 11 to get T1 multi-strike. Now, in an earlier league, earlier in the league, maybe you would actually keep faster attacks instead of multi-strike. Maybe some people would rather that because they can use Awaken multi-strike, but Awaken multi-strike does not apply to Val Lightning Strike, which is where a lot of the damage comes from. So because of that, Awaken multi-strike is controversial, but you could also go with faster attacks. That's also a 1 in 11, so if you were to keep either multi-strike or faster attacks tier 1, it would be a 1 in 5.5 reforges, which is basically 11 exalts because it costs you 2x each time. Not too bad. However, if you're only going for T1 multi-strike, it's 22 exalts on average just to get that. Now at that point, you've got two choices. Choice number 1 is to either augment influence or non-influence to influence, because you've got 3 influence prefixes and an influence suffix. You can also do non-influence to influence. However, non-inf to inf seems to be significantly rarer than augment influence, so it really kind of is up to you. But once you have the multi-strike, you can do that, and at that point, because you've got both the crit strikes and the multiplier both available, right? When you augment influence, it's a 1 in 8.5 to get either, or is it 7.5? No, I can't quite remember, but it's somewhere around there. It's like 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 to get either T1 or T2 of either in-crit strikes or in-crit multiplier. The alternative, once augment influences are really, really expensive, is to actually X-slam, which is what I did. So the way that you do that is that you would actually go to your hideout, and we're just going to imagine that my claw had just the multi-strike and nothing else on it, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type this accuracy and then cannot roll attack mods, right? And what I'll do is I'll craft this strength, dexterity, and accuracy because it's going to block strength, which can't roll in a claw, but it's going to block dexterity and accuracy, which are both bad because dexterity has a really high weighting, accuracy has a really high weighting, and accuracy is also an attack mod, which is why we block this, even though some modifiers could actually be higher if you were to block something else. This is by far the better block. So we're going to block this, and we're going to slam an exalt on it. It's that simple. When we slam an exalt, there's 2 things that can happen. It's going to give us a modifier which does have an attack tag, at which point we need to craft on prefixes cannot be changed and a null, and it's a 1 in 3 that we actually brick the claw, because if we get multi-strike, we got to go back to reforge speed. However, if we actually hit the attack mod, so let's just say it's, I don't know, life gain for each enemy hit by your attacks or something, if we annul that, then we can go right back to crafting the accuracy and slam another exalt and try again. Most of the time, around 70% of the time, however, when you actually use an exalt on the suffixes with the accuracy block, you're going to get a non-attack modifier, right? So that could be a lot of things like resistances, attributes. Those things don't have any attack tags. When that happens, you can craft on cannot roll attack modifier and simply annul. Now, because Ruthless, 40% more, Wed, Multi-Strike, they all have an attack tag, as you can see, it's going to guarantee that it's going to actually annul the modifier that you don't want. Of course, there's also a chance that it annuls the benchcraft, which is 1 exalt. In this case, you just recraft it. Now, we did the math on this, and on average, starting with no suffixes, to get to the point where you have T1 multi-strike and either tier 1 or T2 of either in-crit damage or in-crit strikes, it would cost you 174 exalts to get to the point where you can even augment the final affix. So 174 exalts. The alternative is to do augment influence, which is a 1 in 8, I believe, but that is that is like 40 exalts every single time, which is around 220 exalts. So that means it's 40 exalts and it's 1 in 8, so it's actually 320 exalts, my bad. So on average, it's actually a lot better to do the exalt slamming method if augment influences are expensive. If they're really cheap, let's say they were 10 exalts, then it would only be 80. So it'd be a lot better to do the augment or non-inf to inf. Now, once you've done this process of either the augment or the exalt slamming, and you get to the point where you hit either T1 or T2 of either the crit strikes or the crit damage, it's time to go for the final affix, right? Affix number 6. And At that point, it's an augment influence. There's no block. There's nothing you can do. It's a shot in the dark. You can do either augment influence or non-inf to inf. That is going to depend on whether you have a non-influence modifier on your claw, which you could also do by, bench crafting a non-influence since everything else has an influence mod. And at that point, it's a 1 in 14 that you actually hit the final crit modifier, be it crit chance or crit multi. And it's a 1 in 28 that you actually hit tier 1 of either crit strike chance or crit strike multiplier. Which is why I said, the fact that this claw even exists is an absolute miracle in a temporary league with limited currency from, basically just me. Yes, I had, some help from my community. Yes, I had Photox helping me out greatly, and some other people who threw some currency at this claw. But the reality is, this should not exist. This is a miracle. So, absolutely crazy hyped about this item even existing. Again, like I said, I think earlier on in the video, these items typically have mirror fees around 200 to 300 exalts, on top of the fact that you need to provide a mirror. So it just goes to show that these items and crafting them is ridiculously expensive and also really annoying. I don't know if you've been listening for the last 25 minutes, but obviously it's a very, very annoying craft. But that is the step-by-step guide on how you actually go about crafting these items. Now, I know that I didn't show it in Craft of Exile, and that's just because a lot of these things would be really annoying to show in Craft of Exiles, like the Awakener orbing process and all that good stuff. But anyways, hopefully you guys found this video helpful. To those who will actually try and make one of these themselves, maybe this league and maybe in future leagues, good luck, because you absolutely will need it. But remember that for everybody who's unlucky, somebody needs to be lucky. For everyone who's lucky, someone needs to be unlucky. So you might just be the lucky one. And I've heard of people finishing these items for just a few hundred exalts and then profiting off of the mirror fees for thousands of exalts. So, at the end of the day, RNG is RNG. That being said, before I go, I want to say a massive thank you to all my supporters. So, Resco, Brandon, welcome back. Thomas Mas, Nake, The Great Master, Alex, Tim, Mercury, Johnny, Nalgar, Solomon, Exo, Giro, Costa, and Bizon. Huge thanks to also everyone else who was...
嗰個咩？嗰個台灣仔咪試撚咗用粒低階量嗰粒乜鬼嗰粒 Panty 人乜鬼嘢？佢試咗3080 Ti 啦，屌！咁你個問題就係你魚與熊掌不可兼得嘅情況之下，咁你就係淨係可以買一樣嘢嘅啫嘛。咪又可以俾藉口買個白衣風扇。風扇嘅話，你其實如果你用華石可以唔使換。即係你換，即係或者你係你嘅水冷，你買個扣具都可以用得翻。12700K 加3080用500W 850W 夠晒啦，係嘛？今日掟咗3090 Ti 有啲後悔。睇你係點樣後悔咯？即係爭10% 效能就爭10% 效能㗎啦嘛。好啦，咁樣咧，呢個嘅 Rainbow Six 咧，其實試佢有少少戇鳩嘅，不過都照試啦。嗱，嗰個108P 啦，哇喺我哋108P 可以去上到240 Hz 㗎呢張顯示，唔係呢張 capture 卡。我都唔記得咗呢張係我哋特別鳴謝翻呢個 Airflow Media 嘅呢張 Thunderbolt 4 Thunderbolt 3嘅呢張 capture 卡，嗱呢張 AVT GC555呢張非常之好嘅 Thunderbolt 3嘅 capture 卡。咁咧，我哋校到最低畫質啦，然後咧就 apply 啦，跟住就 benchmark 啦。750W 都夠，高過750W 都可以唔使問。4個 high 就走人啦，真係聽日有屌，好啦。3080買12G 定係買10GB？ 睇你玩乜嘢。如果你玩 4K 就12GB， 如果唔係你普通一般2K 以下10GB 都可以。
同埋10GB 嗰張卡依家係平啲嘅，張蘇體係唔知8299咁上下。咩依家用緊3060 Ti 想換3090 Ti 值唔值？我覺得如果你冇接觸過3090嘅，你可以直上 Ti 咯。但係你嗰個增幅太誇張啊！我會覺得你唔即係你如果你係本身用緊3060 Ti 玩 4K， 你覺得頂唔蒲嘅。咁你係可以直接懟上去3090以上都得嘅。我會咁樣建議，即係唔好話我咁樣建議啦，我會覺得咁樣係合理啲啦。即係若果你唔係嘅，你根本就係玩緊啲1080P 嘅啫，即係你都冇諗過話啲咩即係嗰個即係你冇話啲咩特別因素驅使你去話要換卡嘅話咧，我覺得又冇咁嘅需要咯。其實點解唔將呢啲嘢放上面嗰啲咁戇鳩嘅？係咯，咁樣唔會好啲咩？咁樣唔係會好啲咩？屌，我喺鹹遮緊要啲嘢。好啦，咁1080P 咧嘅3090 Ti 咧就有580嘅平均 FPS 嘅。咁 minimum 嗰個 FPS 咧都有439嘅。咁如果大家咧係想玩呢個360Hz 嘅1080P mon 嘅話咧，都絕對係冇問題㗎嚇，係 overkill 咗㗎啦嚇，絕對穩定啊！2K， 咁2K 就唔使諗啦，咁啊8GB都唔係10GB都夠。哇！屌，等先，摸下條 cable 先。哇！條 cable 又我懷疑係純粹係應該純粹係嗰個風吹到熱啫條線。360Hz 真係睇唔到，真係睇到分別咩？啲人話睇到就睇到㗎啦，你唔好 judge 佢哋。不要 judge 他們啊！好啦，咁我試完個1080P 之後咧，咁我哋就試翻個 4K 版啦。其實我覺得呢個都幾有趣嘅，即係以前好搞笑啊嘛！我見過嗰陣時 NVIDIA 台灣嗰邊唔知使埋啲濕鳩錢揾個唔知玩嗰啲 CSGO 嗰啲咩嗰啲玩家，唔知懟兩張1080啊，跟住然後話咩 4K 玩 CSGO， 我心諗屌！唔拉真事啊！嗰啲舊 game 嗰啲 engine 差到咁撚樣，你同我用 4K 玩，我嗰陣時用 4K 玩，我屌你隻眼都蒙撚埋，嗰個準星細撚度，真係真心嫌嗰個畫面真係大得，即係嗰個顯示嘅畫面大得滯。人老咗，反應慢咗120 FPS 以上都睇唔到乜分別。我又咁樣諗，你係有一隻240同埋一隻144Hz 擺喺隔離咧，你會分到個分別嘅。你一般睇唔出嘅，大家等809呢啲。識玩 CS 都唔會開 4K， 主要食 CPU。其實呢啲 game 都係食 CPU 多嘅，只不過係你有 CPU 再有埋顯示卡嘅時候，你嗰個即係個 FPS 你會好誇張咯。梗係買睇黐人線，咁啊每個人同我買一張呢度，買呢度有250幾個觀眾，你係每人買一張，跟住我咩開個團購嚇？平啲俾你訂卡，即係團購平啲訂卡，跟住後每一個即係因為有250個人咧，即係我諗應該全香港嗰啲3090 Ti 都可以幫我哋買晒。啊真心，嗰啲做乜嘢？咦個 resold 咧喂？乜撚嘢個 resold 嚟嘅？開Ubisoft 從來都不會令你失望嘅。唉 Ubisoft， 從來不會令你失望啊！即係開個 benchmark 試下都會彈個 application。你睇下仲要，你睇下我隻麻鼠喺個左上角嗰度塞撚住咗，叻仔！Ubisoft 真係出色嘅呢間公司，係真係 redo bug right 啊！師傅又可以揾我砌機。屌我叫咗佢唔好砌住啊嘛之前。喂點啊？喂大佬隻滑鼠而家咁樣棘撚住我做乜鳩啊？做乜撚啊？唉真係黐撚線 Ubisoft 真係無撚敵啊！呢間公司真係抵你俾人屌嘅真係。想買307兩咩晒底，好似佢都略喺得啦。550窩牛咧104002K 160升3，呢個 OK 咯，呢個嘅窩數係啱好咯，只可以講。U 比細1，好勁。即係佢又試 benchmark， 跟住佢又要整個 resold 俾你咧，係出個網頁式嘅 resold， 然後個 resold 咧，佢係用佢嗰個內置，即係佢嗰個UPay 嗰個內置，唔係好似咁嘅 UPay， 依家叫咩 Ubisoft Connect 啊，裏邊嗰個 browser 去顯示翻嗰個 FPS 俾你。結果咧就頭先就係咧就炒咗後邊嗰個browser， 然後咧就直接就收撚咗你皮，叻仔！師傅話砌新機全部換新版，講好耐，問下佢咯。喂，屌！不如我直接將呢張卡賣俾佢咪得咯？喂，不如我直接賣張，喂係我整張相俾我賣張3090俾你，我賣張3090 Ti 俾你。喂，不如揾人同阿師傅講，喂，我有啲靚貨，有分靚牛肉啊！喂，有分靚牛肉啊，你要唔要啊？點睇？喂，揾人阿師傅咪做直播㗎嘛？即刻揾人接火棒屌！喂，咁我都要砌機啦，大佬，我幫你，哇！我即刻幫你試嗰張卡 OK 100% work 喎而家，你唔使出去買嗰張卡，好似之前咁樣試完啲卡有問題，跟住搞一輪咁樣喎。今晚問緊有冇啊？真係啊！我問下，我同佢講翻先。唉，我呢啲咩？中意睇人仆街，我中意睇人俾錢。即刻影個盒俾佢睇先。哎呀！即刻馬上即場 cap 圖。睇下佢要邊張咯，唔係，哎呀，我覺得3090 Ti 都係好似太貴咯喎，我不如買3090算啦。OK 都有嘅，啊，平啲添仲可以嚇，以幫 check 卡即買即用係啊，聽日上門同你裝埋都仲得，朋友價。好啦，咁樣咧，如果上到 4K 嘅 low 畫質咧，都叫做有307嘅，咁啊唔係平都係395，最低都係307。咁我哋估計咧，估計應該開到 Ultra 都過200嘅應該，試一試啦。最開埋一個基本上應該冇人會開嘅 setting Ultra。我想問在座有冇啲人打 Rainbow Six？定我下次問下 Patrick C 啊屌！問下 Patrick C 你打呢個 Rainbow Six 嘅時候會唔會開到最高特效㗎？屋企有現貨咯。 佢咩？佢今晚玩咩？要食紅雞先收台，但係打到呢家都未食到，梗係用佢仲用緊嗰個 Razer 手仔喺度，使諗住學嗰個唔知學嗰個鬼佬。我見有個鬼佬唔知攞散彈槍定唔知乜鬼嘢，好似打到好撚勁啊嘛！攞手掣打，因為佢個 Auto M 嗰個咧，令到佢好似喺度鳩跑嘅時候都可以好準啊嘛！永久私人售後可以上屋企打翻鬥。可以倒轉咩？倒咩啊？倒咩嗰個咩啊？佢嗰個係佢之前唔知打女武神嗰陣時係咩整咗個乜嘢打咩倒轉食屎啊嘛，跟住然後攞咗粒麥樂雞屎放口度啊！屌！應該冇人會開最高畫質，飛馬華碩感謝祭啲卡抵冇睇喎。我諗正常嗰啲價咧都係華碩俾佢嘅，所以其實因為華碩就會好管住啲價，唔俾你啲人咧亂咁落去啲價嘅。咁所以變咗咧，如果你話咩華碩感謝祭嘅話咧，應該都係華碩批准啦。咁嗰啲價就係華碩。即標出嚟嘅咯，咁你話華碩啲嘢不嬲都貴開嘅話，咁佢有得平嘅，咁一定係平過之前咯。都有300嘅，即係如果你有隻 4K， 正常冇可能有啦。240Hz 嘅 mon 你都可以穩穩陣就行得到嘅。就係咁樣啦。好啦，咁我哋又試完一個啦。咁我哋咧就真係可能要帶你 download 嘅啫，有機會。哇！屌，真係黐線喎！呢個 Ubisoft 真係嗰啲 game 係唔知乜 Q 嘢，點解硬係要黐埋牆咁樣？Horizon Zero Dawn 好似係有冇 benchmark 㗎？睇下先，好似冇 benchmark。師傅話贊助先要贊助，我贊助佢啦，我蝕俾阿師傅買，由 VG 贊助蝕賣，開啟字幕 Sony，飛馬咩3060 TUF RGB 3899唔抵，你有冇睇我早兩嗰條片啊？3060 Ti 嘅華碩雕 mini 講緊4300幾喎。喂，點啊？佢冇得入 option 㗎，佢直接就嚟料㗎啦。呢個就係阿羅伊，L 好似啲英文咪 L 嘅讀，算唔算贊助裝機人工？喂，真係點啊，大佬？你話顯示唔到 FPS 俾我 A 來。喂，佢有冇諗過我感受？我其實係想睇隻 game 我 benchmark 啊，唔係想睇你嗰啲點解一日即係其實 Sony 係咪真係唔知電腦 game 係要點做啊？真係有撚趣喎 Sony。我自己俾錢買 game 嘅，我屌得落。唔係 Sony 俾 game